D-Mace, Finnegan and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you on this day after the end of the NFL regular season. And for all of you, and for Derek and Willie, I've got a surprise for you. David, if you please. Congratulations, Titans fans. It's over. You made it through this terrible, horrible, no good, very bad football season. To quote Gerald Ford, the 38th president of these United States, my fellow Nashvillians, our long national nightmare is over. The Titans season is finished.
Praise Jesus.
And you have been rewarded with the number one pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, Joe Milton, that Vol for life. He's not only a New England Patriot, he is an American Patriot because he delivered you the number one pick in the NFL Draft as the Patriots blow their opportunity by beating the Bills, giving the Titans the number one pick in the NFL Draft. So you made it, Titans fans. You made it through the rain. It is a little snowy outside, but that's okay. You have the number one pick. You've been rewarded for this awful season. Gentlemen, your thoughts.
Thanks to Milton. Milton for president. Oh, man. I guess you got to laugh and, from crying. You got to.
Sometimes it's so sad. You have to chuckle just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. It's over with, fellas. I don't know what we were expecting yesterday, but whatever it is, I'm sure majority of the fans got what they expected, and that was a team that's not good, showing once again that they're not good against a playoff-bound team. And like Adam just said, hey, and your reward is the first pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. Titans, you're on the clock. And now you get to start your franchise over.
Willie, were you able to watch this game in Calgary yesterday?
I was not. I was watching the
good for you, Willie. Good for you. Listen, good for you.
I dutifully listened to the Titans broadcast, which was quite interesting to paint the picture. And I was watching the clips, on Twitter that would come in on the key plays and everything. Some of the craziness, like the last touchdown of the season scored by the Titans, which was a pass intended for somebody other than the guy that caught it. That was a fitting end to
it was
to
intended for the turf.
I would like to point out, I'm hoping to find this. It was from Seth Walder of ESPN that apparently Will Levis's QBR yesterday, I think it was 1.2. Which was the single worst quarterbacking performance of the entire NFL season.
1.2?
Hold on. See,
didn't it go up after that throw?
I don't know. I have to find.
It probably did go up to 1.3.
Let me find it. Let me find it.
I will verify this because.
Hey, congratulations to Tay Martin as well. One catch.
Oh, you're right.
49 yards and a touchdown.
Seth Walder of ESPN tweeted, Will Levis recorded a 1.2 QBR today, narrowly beating out Aaron Rodgers' Week 17 performance for worst QBR game of the year. So if there's any way for Will Levis to go out, it's not on top, it's on bottom. And that is exactly what Will Levis did yesterday.
He didn't go out the way he came in, I tell you.
The passer rating was 108.7, which looks pretty good, but the QBR 1.2. So that's pretty interesting. But either way, it's a fitting end to the story. So I followed the game and I was watching the NFC South drama. That's what we had in our hotel room in Calgary. Game starting at 11 o'clock with the back and forth between the Panthers, Falcons, and then the Baker Mayfield Bowl, pulling it out against the Saints late in the Mike Evans thing. That was kind of fun to watch. So that's where my perspective at the back-to-back games in Vancouver, in Calgary, and we get to go back to Winnipeg. So you think it's cold in Nashville. It's 14 degrees here, which is the warmest it's been since we've been in Calgary. And in Winnipeg right now, it is -7. So we're going to go down 21 degrees starting at 14 above zero.
What's lower, the temperature in Winnipeg or the Titans turnover differential at the end of the season?
Okay, here's what I got from the Titans broadcast. D-Mace, this was the stat. Mike Keith shared this towards as the clock was winding down, right? And it was just time to sort of go back through the season. And he was realizing that, hey, this could happen. The Patriots are about to win the Joe Milton show and get the number 1 pick. But he said the Titans, the turnover margin is one thing. But if you look at points off of turnovers, like yesterday, the debacle, the latest football folly of the bad reverse that got picked up by a guy that played at Ensworth, and then UT scores a touchdown, just fitting for what had happened. He said they are -102 in points off of turnovers. The turnovers the Titans got, they turned into something like 33 points. And I think he said of the giveaways that the Titans had, the opposition got 105 points. So the difference was over 100 points in, quote, points off of turnovers. That's a huge stat.
I mean, but it's fitting for a bad team. So no stat.
Right. That's how you get the first pick.
No stats right now in regards to the Tennessee Titans would surprise me. And I don't think it should surprise anyone. This team is bad. And when you are a bad team, you lead the NFL in bad things. And sometimes it can even be historic as it is, for the Titans. So, I mean, yesterday was a sort of summed up their season. They couldn't get anything generated on offense. On defense, they show flashes, then all of a sudden you give up a 90-some yard run or 80-some yard run. On offense, you throw a ball intended for nobody, and it's a Hail Mary, and the rookie gets his first touchdown pass. Tay Martin gets his first catch and first NFL touchdown on a play. Then you have a run play. Well, before that, you have a run play that just get blown up in return for a touchdown. I mean, everything that could have went wrong. And then the way you sort of, I'm not advocating for nobody getting fired. I think we've done enough of that throughout the shows that precede us and shows after us. But yet yesterday was just, that was bad. Yesterday was just bad football. And the back and forth with the quarterbacks, that didn't look good on Brian Callahan. It didn't. Because
he had no explanation for it
exactly.
After. He didn't really give a reason.
Absolutely.
He just said kind of just because.
Exactly. That looks bad on him. Like he doesn't know what he's doing. And I don't want to sit here and look at that one situation. And there probably were more, but he's a first-year coach. First-year coaches are going to do some things, not make some calls or challenge some things. Vrabel did in his first year, and he got much better his second year at how he managed the game. So I understand that part. But to do this quarterback sort of back and forth dance, I was cool with it beforehand because I said, okay, what they're going to do probably is let Will Levis play the first half and then Mason Rudolph will play the second half and sort of do it that way. But it just all looked unorganized. It did. And I'm not advocating for him to lose his job. That is what I am not doing that.
You're not doing that.
Yeah.
But as you explain what you're explaining, there are a lot of people who are listening and saying, well, if that's the way it is, why aren't they making a change at coach?
And I don't know. And here I'm just laying it out. I'm not trying to, because he did some good things. He kept the team together for the season. He kept that locker room together. Okay, so you got to count that against for him, because holding a locker room together when you're that bad is a task in itself. Every day you got to find a way to keep that locker room together, sometimes even over the X's and O's, because if that locker room dissolves, I don't care what you draw up from an X and O standpoint, it ain't going to work. So I give him that. But yesterday, I don't know if I'm the only person that felt that way, but yesterday it just looked bad. And that whole quarterback situation, it just seems like he didn't know what he was doing. It was a whole debacle. And maybe that was a decision for somebody else made at the top and he had to do it. But either way, it did not look good. It looked like a unorganized team.
When you look at yesterday as a whole, it really was a microcosm, as Derek said, of this season. The Titans look disorganized at times. They're not a good football team. They made critical errors. The crowd was sparse. Now, the weather was terrible. Nobody had anything to play for in this game except for the Texans trying to get right, which they did on that opening drive. That's all we saw of C.J. Stroud and the starters for the Texans. I did love, by the way, and I took a screenshot of it and posted it on my Twitter account. CBS went into the crowd and found a couple of Titans fans wearing paper bags over their heads. And one of the fans had a paper bag with Shedeur Sanders on the paper bag. So we clearly know where that Titans fan is thinking, hey, with the number 1 pick in the 2025 NFL draft, if you want Shedeur Sanders, you can have him. And look, we're going to talk about who they should draft, should they trade back, all of these things over the course of the next few months. We're going to have plenty of time to speculate about all of these things. We can start today, and if you want to get in on the conversation, 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. It is your day. You tell us where to go. You text us. You call us. But this crowd was sparse. It got even lighter in the stands as the weather changed around here. You know, the Titans in their Houston Oilers uniforms. J.J. Watt was trolling the heck out of the Titans on the CBS desk. At one point,
did you guys see this?
Go ahead.
You may be going where I'm thinking, Adam, is just saying that. Did you see the bizarre thing where Tom McCarthy, who is the voice of the Phillies during the baseball season, a very good announcer that does a lot of college hoops for CBS, but he gets the low game on the totem pole, which often is the Titans, especially in this situation. He sent it back to the studio for a studio report.
This is where I was going, yes.
Yeah, and so explain what happened, Adam. Do you know why this happened? This was hilarious.
So you know how they do. Now we've got a CBS game break. Let's go to J.J. Watt in the studio. And they threw to the clip of Derek Barnett running the fumble return back for a touchdown. And awful announcing, which is a great website that tracks all of these things. They had a headline that said J.J. Watt trolls Titans during game break. I'm trying to find it. They made it sound like it was done on purpose. But yes, here it is. The headline was J.J. Watt and CBS pull off epic troll on Titans with fake studio update. So again, maybe it was a bit of a troll job, because J.J. Watt mentioned a couple of times that the Titans were wearing the Oilers uniforms.
The Houston Oilers, yeah.
Right. Clearly J.J. Watt doesn't care for the Titans wearing the Oilers uniforms as a legendary member of the Houston Texans. But anyway,
can I say something about
go
the
right
fans,
ahead.
Though?
Go right ahead.
Because, look, this is something I don't like, the Oilers uniforms, especially against the Texans. If you want to pull them out every few years as kind of a tribute historically, but I don't think the Titans fans connect at all with the Oilers uniforms anymore. I don't think that's a good look. But let me say this about the fans that did stay in there. If you made it from the beginning to the end of that game, you are a diehard. They used to have this award. If you went to Candlestick Park, and D-Mace, you probably played a game or two in Candlestick.
Oh, yeah.
But when the Giants, there's something weird about the weather. I don't understand everything about the Bay Area weather, and I've been to a couple of Giants games at night. I never went to Candlestick, but they had a bad team in the early 80s. And at night, when it got really, really cold, even in the summertime, they would award what's called the Croix de Candlestick to the fans who made it through the entire game when it was really bad with the weather. So they got this award as they left the park. I feel like the Titans should have given some sort of award to their fans who made it through that game. The nasty weather, cold and rainy, that's about the worst combination you can have to watch that football game for a team going nowhere. That you deserve some sort of, like, I'm serious about this. You deserve a salute for making it through that. And my other observation was Mason Kinsey, D-Mace, who tried to tackle Derek Barnett after the fumble. I was reminded of Jeff Van Gundy when he went out on the floor
with Latrell
as the coach of the Knicks. Yes, with Sprewell. No, it was. Remember the fight between
yes,
the Knicks?
it
Allen
was Van
Houston.
Gundy. Yes.
Van Gundy was hanging on, I think, to Alonzo Mourning.
It was Alonzo Mourning. Yes.
And his hair, his bald head was like flapping. The comb over was going on. I thought Mason Kinsey should get the Jeff Van Gundy award.
Latrell Sprewell was involved in that fight, if I'm not mistaken.
He was holding.
I think he was on that Knicks team. Yeah,
he was holding back Alonzo Mourning, I believe.
I'm having David pull up the clip from CBS with J.J. Watt. We'll play that in a minute.
I don't understand what J.J. Watt's deal is, man. You were not. I can see if J.J. Watt, he got drafted by the Houston Oilers and then, somehow became a Houston Texan. I can understand that. But you never once put on a Houston Oiler jersey nor helmet outside of probably when you were a kid. So I don't understand this JJ Watt thing and him, against the Oilers and the whole, he think that the Houston Texans should have, the Oilers stuff. It's like, dude, get over it. Like, it's never going to happen.
A long time ago.
Exactly.
When he was 10 years old, this was all settled.
Absolutely.
I don't know how
he wasn't even in high school when this all was settled. It's like, come on, man, stop.
This was decided in 1997, or 98, when they decided they were going to change the uniforms.
He probably was in high school.
Paul Tagliabue came to Nashville, and the press conference was at TSU, because that's where you guys had training camp, D-Mace. And they announced that there would be a new name in a year, right? And then I don't even want to get into how many hours and calls we got of suggestions for the new nickname of the Tennessee Oilers. It got quite crazy, but they announced on that day, and they thought enough of it for Bud Adams to have the commissioner of the league come in and said that the Oilers name and history would be, quote, retired.
We do have the clip from the broadcast that we were referring to. David, if you will.
Throws him. It's incomplete. Time to go to New York for an update.
Guys, this must be a mistake, but I'm going to do it anyway. We've got a Houston Oilers fumble picked up by the Houston Texans and ran back for a touchdown. And yes, that does appear to be 2 times in a row that the Houston Oilers uniforms have been worn against the Houston Texans, and the Texans happen to be 2-0 while wearing it. How about that?
Thank you, JJ, for that history lesson.
Did they wear? They didn't wear them in the first.
No. But I guess the Texans beat the Titans wearing them last year.
Yeah.
Yes,
they did
in overtime.
So
the Titans had a good chance of winning that game. They let it get away. That was who was the guy they always bring out of mothballs?
Case Keenum.
Texas, not Davis Mills, but the other quarterback, Case
Keenum.
Case Keenum pulled that one out.
So look, the Titans, they're the worst team in the NFL, so they are fodder for everybody, including J.J. Watt.
Yes.
6'1".
You gotta wear it.
Yes, you do. 615-737-1025. It is your day. It is a reaction Monday. It is Black Monday in the NFL. Some coaches have already lost their jobs. Some general managers have retained their jobs. We are still awaiting word on what's going to happen here. Brian Callahan is scheduled to address reporters at 1:30. We will bring that news conference to you in its entirety. But let's talk about Brian Callahan, because the fact that Brian Callahan is scheduled to address reporters would suggest that Brian Callahan is being retained as Tennessee Titans head coach. We'll talk about that next. Willie Darnick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
The most explosive division in all of football is the AFC South. This is where we're going to get the most activity. It's volatile right now. And Tennessee is sitting there with a 3-13 record. They're in contention for the number 1 overall pick. And the owner is not happy about it right now. Now, Brian Callahan was just given a start, and I think he'll be given more time. But it certainly sounds like the people in the organization are uneasy and bracing for something to happen. It doesn't sound like right now it involves Brian Callahan, but we're going to see what the owner has to say about that. We're leaning safe right now.
That was Adam Schefter on Sunday NFL Countdown yesterday before the Tennessee Titans lost and secured the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Brian Callahan scheduled to address reporters at 1:30, which, as I said, would suggest, as Adam Schefter said there, that Brian Callahan will return for a second season. Now we wait to see what happens with the front office, and if the Titans make changes there could be a coaching change at some point if a new general manager wants his own coach. But as it stands right now, Brian Callahan will return as the Titans coach for his second season. Willie, I know that you and Derek have both been on the give them one more year platform. What do you make of Brian Callahan apparently being safe and returning to the Titans for a second year?
I just think it's a bad look. Depending, with you got to give me every scenario is a little bit different, but I think generally speaking, especially when you are in a new era, which I think is a rebuild. I said it all last summer that it's a terrible look to pull the plug on a regime this early when you just get in there. For example, what the Patriots are doing with Gerard Mayo, I think is really sad. They absolutely hung him out to dry after 1 year. They knew they were going to be bad. They just replaced a legend. They're moving forward in a different direction. And to fire him when you knew you were in a rebuild, you have the quarterback, you have the cap space, and now you used him basically as a 1 year gap. That's a terrible look, I think, by the Patriots to do that. I don't care if you think you're going to get Vrabel or whoever you think you're going to replace him with. That is a bad, bad look. And I think I would say the same thing if the Titans made a change. And I would say the same thing about Rand Carthon. They might keep Callahan and fire Carthon, which I think also is pretty messy. And I guess we can't rule anything out until we find out at 1:30. But I think you've got to give some continuity to a regime for 2 or 3 years before you consider making changes, especially unless you think it's a team that's supposed to win right away, which this team was not.
Derek, over the past decade, according to ESPN, Gerard Mayo joins Frank Reich with the Panthers in 2023, Nathaniel Hackett with the Broncos in 2022, Lovie Smith and David Culley for the Texans in 2022 and 2021, Urban Meyer with the Jaguars in 2021, Freddie Kitchens with the Browns in 2019, Steve Wilkes with the Cardinals in 2018, Chip Kelly for the Niners in 2016, and Jim Tomsula for the Niners in 2015 as non-interim head coaches who didn't make it to their second season. So it's happened a lot over the past decade. Coaches getting one season before being fired. You can agree or disagree with, as Willie said, with whether that's the right thing to do. But over the past decade, teams have not been afraid to make coaching changes after one season if they don't like what they see.
Yeah, you're right. And some of those teams are still in the same situation they were in when they made that 1 year trade. I mean, when they made that 1 year change at head coach or at GM after one season. So, I mean, listen, I'm sure, that was strictly a business decision in New England, because it seems like he has a great relationship with Gerard Mayo. But my thing is, if this is what it took, knowing the situation that you put him in, it was almost like, man, if you don't make it to the playoffs, you're getting fired, basically. And maybe he understood that when he took the job. I don't know, but it just seems a little different, even though it has been done in recent years. And I would say the same thing here in Tennessee. I'm not gonna, because of how because of how I explained what I saw yesterday from Brian Callahan in regards to the quarterback sort of carousel he was trying to implore, or he did, but it didn't work. Doesn't make me change my mind on what I believe would be best for this organization, me and me alone. Other people have other thoughts and opinions, and listen, you can have your opinion. Neither one of us are experts in regards to running a franchise, but I just think that if you want to start building some stability, this is what Coach Belichick talked about. Teams that are successful are teams that are patient and are willing to build, that are on the same plane as far as your vision across the board, no matter who it is. We got an across the board vision for this team moving forward. But there has to be some continuity and there has to be a sense of stability there. There's no stability with the Titans if they do this over again, because what's to say that next year, if it doesn't change, she's not going to do it again. But people don't care about that. They only care about the here and the now. Do it now. We'll worry about later. Well, that's why you're in the damn position that you're in right now. It's because you worried about what now instead of looking to the future and being patient. Patience pays off sometimes. Hell, a lot of times patience pays off. I'm not sure she's going to show patience. I'm not sure that she will. I don't know. But if she was asking me, there are some things that I don't agree with that Rand did, but there are some things that I agree with that he did, and that goes with Brian Callahan as well. But hey, listen, if she wants to make the decision and clean house, okay, fine. Hopefully it works, and hopefully it works if she chooses to bring them back. I'm not sitting here and going to try to go back and forth with people no more. I'm done with that stuff.
Chris is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Chris, thank you for holding. Please go ahead.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good, thank you.
Doing well.
Yeah, I agree with Willie that I don't think that she should fire anybody this year. I've heard more talk about wanting to fire Carthon than I have Callahan, and I myself think Carthon has done a decent job. I mean, he came in under Vrabel that first year. He only had 6 picks in the draft. They had limited money to spend. And he's brought in some decent talent, really, the last 2 drafts. But Callahan is the one that bothers me. I watched every game this year. I wasted a lot of time watching these games this year, and it was some of the most horrible football I've seen in the NFL. And just give me some hope going forward with Callahan. I mean, I want him to do well, but I didn't see any improvement at all. Yeah, you could say that special teams stopped making horrendous blunders, but overall, I didn't see any improvement anywhere. And he's supposed to be a quarterback guru. Levis didn't improve under him. Rudolph didn't play any better. Just try to give me some hope going forward with this guy.
Okay.
Thanks for the call, Chris.
It's a good point.
Thank you, Chris.
If I were to evaluate the coaching staff, I would say, you tell me what you think, D. Mace.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a young coaching staff that I hope will grow, right? And you should have known that when you hired him, that it was young.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see him sprinkle in a few more Bill Callahans, right? I think just some older assistants
Mm-hmm.
that can help, maybe with some details and maybe with a little bit of wisdom to go as he grows into the job. I think if I were to nitpick on that, that's what I would look at in terms of some of the changes. You tell me what you think.
Listen, they're going to have to, it's not going to come back status quo. There's going to be some changes made. Now, in regards to the youth on this coaching staff, I think he has a lot of coaches that have coached a lot of years. Frank Bush is one of them.
Tracy Rocker.
Tracy Rocker. You look at Steven Jackson, who I played with. He's coached a lot of years. They have people on this staff that have been in and around football or coached football for a very long time. I'm not sure if that is like the one thing that will change, the play on the field. Now, if he wants to hire some more seasoned, older coaches, then yeah, he has every right to do that. But I don't think anything's wrong with technically the coaching staff as far as their years or their tenures as coaches. You want to have a mix of young and old on your coaching staff, because that's how that embodies your team. Your team is full of young individuals and older individuals. So, but there will be changes, like you said, Willie. There will be changes on the coaching staff. Now, will they be major changes or will they be just minor change? I think Coach Anderson is a major change because he's tasked for one unit on a football team. He's one of the top assistant coaches. You got the defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, then the special teams coordinator. He's that guy. So that is a big move if Brian Callahan chooses to do it. But other moves he may make, they may be little smaller moves, adding more coaches to his coaching staff, or guys choosing to go somewhere else and coach. So there will be some coaching changes. But in regards to he possibly need more Bill Callahans on the team, I don't think that's necessarily going to change the play on the field.
615-737-1025. We'll take your text. We'll take your calls. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Coming up next, we do have a texter that asks a question that is on a lot of Titans fans' minds, and we will get to that next. But before we do, we have 75% off everything right now at theGameNashville.com/deals. That's right. All of Nashville's best deals are marked down lower than ever. If you are like us and spent a little too much over the holidays, or you forgot a gift or two, this deal is for you. Go to theGameNashville.com/deals for 75% off great eats like 312 Pizza, Black Rabbit, and Prentice Hot Chicken, plus offers on movies, experiences, and adventure. Everything's got to go, so you better go fast to theGameNashville.com/deals while supplies last. It's a Happy New Year markdown from Nashville's best deals.
Well, unfortunately, Max's request from the Jay Moore family is not coming true. It is -7 in Winnipeg right now. But our coverage of this road trip continues, and it will throughout the season with the help of League Company. And it'll be a rematch with the Jets tomorrow night. We'll have the coverage for you here. League Company, a proud sponsor of Nashville Predators. They've been there for a long time with the Preds and a lot of other entities around Middle Tennessee. They've been in business since 1944. They do a great job when it comes to keeping your house warm. So turning the heat up is something they have expertise in. They can't do it for an entire city, especially Winnipeg, but they can do it in your house. So give them a call. If you got issues with your heating unit, haven't had it checked in a while, looking into getting a new system, call them at 615-567-1000 or leaguecompany.com. That's 615-567-1000 or leaguecompany.com. League Company, proud sponsor, Nashville Predators.
Tomorrow, it's your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the game tomorrow night, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Rexro tomorrow morning at 8:45. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Eric is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCounty.com. Eric, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead, my friend.
Hey, guys, I'm going to get to Titans in a minute. But there was also, you were talking about coaches that was fired after one season. Of course, not Reisman, but another one you can add to that list was a former assistant on this staff, Les Steckel, who was fired from the Vikings after a 3-13 season with the Minnesota Vikings. So that's another one you could add that was fired after one season. But, guys, as far as the Titans go, I had planned to go to the game yesterday. In fact, I was supposed to beat Michigan in the Sun before the game, but because of the weather conditions and I'd been a little bit under the weather, I decided to skip the game because I didn't want to get sicker. I've been battling allergies and then been coughing like crazy the last few days. I'm doing a lot better, but wasn't going to sit out that drear condition. Especially also I had a custom-made Christmas poncho that I got from my brother. It was gifted to me. I planned to wear to the game, so got a lot of compliments on it too. But as far as the game yesterday, it was just frustrating just to see some of the embarrassing things. The Derek Barnett touchdown where players were coming off the bench to celebrate with him. But also, I'm sure you saw this, the two Titans fans that were sitting at the game where they had bags over their head. One had Shadur Sanders on his bag. And I actually announced, I can't remember specifically what they said, but they're making the comment saying that they were surprised the bags were holding up because of the rain, that they thought the bags would be in a little more worse shape or possibly ready to tear. That's really bad. But one last thing, and I'll get off, and I'm hoping that the Titans keep both Rand and Callahan. I don't think it would be a good look if they fire one or the other. Either keep them both or get rid of them both. But I can't remember where I heard it. It was early this morning on it may have been on TV or another station where they were talking about the fact you've got Trent Baalke, who still has a job with Jacksonville, who had fired Urban Meyer for 1 year, and the whole Chris Ballard thing where Pat McAfee is going off about Chris Ballard. The fact that he's been there, of course, and they haven't had a quarterback since Andrew Luck with the whole thing with Richardson, and also the guy I keep drawing the blank who played for Denver yesterday, Kansas City against Denver yesterday. Yeah, Carson Wentz, and he's still got a job. Or something like those guys should be gone. I kind of thought that was interesting. Guys, it's always good to talk to you. Y'all take care, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Eric. And here's the text that I wanted to read because we're talking about what the Titans should do. That's going to be the conversation now for the rest of the day, and who knows how long, depending on when announcements are made about the status of Brian Callahan, Rand Carthon, etc. Wes in Clarksville says, I know y'all say give them another year, meaning Callahan and Carthon. I know, Derek, you and Willie believe that to be the right course of action. But do you have faith that they will use the number one pick the right way? And if they get a quarterback, can they do the things to make him successful? That is a big argument for those who want to see seismic changes. Do you want Rand Carthon picking the number one pick in the draft or making a trade to trade down and then making those picks? Do you want Brian Callahan to be coaching that quarterback, if it is a quarterback? That, Willie, is the biggest question that the anti-Callahan, anti-Carthon crew is using in response to those like you and Derek who think they should stick around.
Well, I'll say this. This is their chance to start building a roster the way it needs to be. My argument has been from the start, if you take a look at what he inherited, there was almost zero homegrown talent that he inherited. And you had a disastrous trade of a frontline wide receiver where you got essentially nothing in return. That's not on Rand Callahan. So my answer to that question is, because I hear this is the narrative that we hear all the time, D-Mace. Mm-hmm. Do you trust that these guys know what they're doing? And so I will turn to Amy Adams Strunk and say, if you don't trust that this guy and Chad Brinker and this infrastructure that you built and you made this big to do last year when you fired Mike Vrabel, that this is what you needed: better communication, better infrastructure, better lines of communication, all of this stuff, that you never should have hired him to begin with. And his drafts have not been catastrophically bad. So I don't, this is his third draft and only his second in which he has been running it with Chad Brinker and the people that have been in place. The first draft, he came in very late to a staff that already had all of Mike Vrabel's people. And so that wasn't fully, I don't think, his full operation. So we're so young in this. So you have put this structure in for a reason. And if you didn't believe it, if you don't believe in it now, what have you found out in the last year? You would have to have found out something really, really bad for you to be thinking about making a change at this point, if you really consider what they inherited. That's my argument.
Listen, people have already made up their minds. It's kind of like the election. I don't care what year it is. Every 4 years they have this election. So whoever's running, I'm not even getting into whoever's running. So don't think I'm going down there. But once people make up their mind, they make up their mind, no matter what happens in between them making up their mind and something actually happening. People have already made up their minds. So I'm not going to sit here and again, I'm not going to sit here and try to debate. I'm just going to give you my opinion based on it. Listen, the caller, it's a good question. But if I am definitive on what I said. I think they should bring it back. If they don't, okay, fine. They don't. Just get it right. If you do move forward, make sure it's right, because if you don't, then you're going to be doing this over again, or those same fans that are displeased right now and angry and upset right now, they're going to be angry, upset next year too if you're not winning. Even if you change regimes, they're going to still be the same fans that are arguing, bitching, and moaning, and they have every right to. They pay their money, they watch this team, and they support it. What I'm saying is this: like, if you're gonna make the change, but don't make the change because you hear a bunch of bitching and moaning. Make the change because you think it's the right change for your organization. Because if you don't, I remember someone said, frankly, if you listen to the fans long enough, you'll be over there with them. If you listen to those fans long enough, and I'm not saying that, listen, again, they have every right to do it and say what they do. Say what they say, because they pay money to get in that stadium. They support the team, good or bad. But you keep on making decisions based upon the temperature of the fans. You ain't never going to have a team. You're just not. Okay, because you're never going to get everyone time to build a roster. And maybe you're never in this position again as an organization. I hope you're not. You were in this position sort of 6 years ago, and you struck gold. You got the number one pick, and you had a GM that you had just hired that made the right moves that first year, trading out of that pick, accumulating picks, had two foundational guys. Really one. They had Jarrell Casey, that was a foundational guy here. And then they had Marcus Mariota, but they didn't quite know if he was the franchise guy or not, but he was just coming off a good season. What the GM did at the time, John Robinson, you struck gold. You had the first pick in the draft, and you were able to sell it off because you figured, even the GM, that Marcus is our quarterback, so we don't need to waste any pick on a quarterback. We can trade out of it, accumulate picks, and build our team. You did that, and you were allowed to draft people like Derrick Henry and Kevin Byard, guys like that helped build this franchise to what it was prior to 3 years ago. So you struck gold. So again, if you believe in these guys, Amy, keep them. If you don't, change. But don't change because the fans are screaming and yelling, because there are some that are not screaming and yelling. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
I'm done with debating, like giving you the pros. And no, if you've made your decision already, you've made it. That's what, as far as fans. So I can't say anything to change it.
Yes. You have to understand why you're in the position that you're in. Now, if you've determined day after day that Rand Carthon and everybody surrounding him has no idea what they're doing, then that's a whole different thing, right? That's something you'd have to determine internally, that he's completely lost your confidence in a very short period of time after you made the decision that he was the right guy to hire. And you made this big production all last summer about how we've got this new structure. We believe in communication. We got the analytics side of it. Rand's going to go work on his strengths, all of this stuff. And last year's draft wasn't that bad. Then I think that would be pretty radical, I think. But D-Mace, you made the point. Don't do it because you just think the fans are angry. because you have to understand why they're in this position. They had a terrible season from a quarterback that they thought had a chance to be good. And they had almost zero homegrown talent when they got there. And that was very apparent. Just go through those drafts. We've done it many times from 2020 to 2022.
So I have not made a declaration one way or the other as to where I stand on this issue. And I've heard Willie and Derek talk about it. I think they make some good points. I've heard, Jared is the ringleader, but I know that Robbie Stanley wants to make a change. Chase McCabe wants to make a change. I believe Big Joe Dubin wants to make a change. It's reminiscent of the goaltending conversation we had with the Predators, Team Saros versus Team Askarov, the Avengers, whatever the non-Avengers are. I'm not big on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is why I'm leaning towards making a change at general manager. I think it goes back to what Amy Adams Strunk said when she fired Mike Vrabel, talking about how unacceptable the results were for the Titans after they made the change with Mike Vrabel. He had a 6-win season last season. It was a 7-win season the year before. We knew how that season ended. John Robinson was fired during the 2022 season. They lost 7 games in a row to end that season. And she's talked about how unacceptable those results were. So how can these results, 3-14, the worst record in the NFL, how can that be acceptable? And I agree with you, Derek, that Amy Adams Strunk should not make this change just because she wants to pacify the fans that are calling for seismic change. I agree with that. I don't think she should be swayed by that. But I don't think she can say the results of last season and I guess the season before were unacceptable. See this and be okay with it. That would be my argument.
Do you fire everybody after you have a bad season? That's the question. Like, it's clearly unacceptable the season you had, right? Nobody sits there and says we were 3-14. That's acceptable. Nobody would say that, but that's not the question. The question is, do we have the right people in place to make the decisions going forward? Do I like the people in place even going through the fire here? Are these the people that can carry me through the other side to the next really good Titans team?
Well, it appears that Brian Callahan will be, at least Amy Adams Strunk, it appears, believes that Brian Callahan can be part of that solution because he's scheduled to address reporters at 1:30. No determination has been made. No statement has been released. But as we've discussed, I doubt that he would be speaking to reporters today if he was about to get fired. So it appears that Brian Callahan will be back. Of course, the biggest question is, and we'll talk about this next, is what to do with Rand Carthon. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game.
All right. Before I get out of here and head for Winnipeg, and yes, it's about a 20-degree drop from where I am now to where I'm going. Stop letting high interest debt weigh you down in 2025. Talk to Loan Pronto about the rapid equity loan. They can get you cash out of your home's equity. If you're a homeowner, you have the opportunity to get cash out through Loan Pronto's vehicle, the rapid equity loan. It uses AI-driven tech to get you approved for cash quickly in as little as 1 day. And then in just a matter of days, you can have the cash to address your financial needs. Knock out that credit card bill or that car loan that have those higher interest rates that are eating up your budget every month. So call Loan Pronto, see how much you can qualify for, and then they'll have you on a better financial track. 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781 on approved credit, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
D-Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Derek Mason and Adam Vingan here with you. Willie Donick with the Predators up in Canada. They practiced in Calgary. They are headed to Winnipeg shortly. They resume action against the Winnipeg Jets tomorrow night. So Willie will be back with us on the program tomorrow. So we're talking about what the Titans could do. Brian Callahan is scheduled to address reporters at St. Thomas Sports Park at 1:30. We will bring you his news conference in its entirety, starting at 1:30. The fact that the coach is holding a news conference would seem to suggest that he will be the coach next season. But the one thing that could throw a wrench into all of that is what the Titans decide to do with their general manager, Rand Carthon. Derek, we've already seen a lot of changes around the NFL. We saw Doug Peterson get fired. We saw Gerard Mayo get fired. But we've also seen owners put out statements saying that certain coaches and GMs are going to be retained. I believe the Giants have announced that their GM, Joe Shane, and their coach, Brian Daboll, are going to be returning to their posts with the New York Giants. Although the Jaguars fired Doug Peterson, they are retaining their general manager, Trent Baalke. The Indianapolis Colts have announced that Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard will be returning as coach and GM, respectively. We have not seen any sort of announcement, any sort of statement from Amy Adams Strunk, which leaves the status of the team up in the air, but particularly Rand Carthon. And as we talked about in the last segment, I would say that the battle lines have been drawn on the station. On the anti-Rand crew, you have Jared as the general, followed by Robbie Stanley, Chase McCabe.
His little minions.
Not sure you should call our boss a minion.
I'm calling
Robbie
him a
Stanley,
minion.
Chase McCabe, Big Joe Dubin. They are on Jared's side.
Jared and his minions.
And I'm a soft
Stillman and Company.
It is
there we go.
There it is. It is indeed Stillman and Company, which you could hear at 2:00. I am not fully on that side, but I am leaning toward that side. On the other side, it's you, it's Willie. I believe Joe Rexroad is on your side as well. So it's more toward the anti-Rand Club than the Rand Club, which is what Jared affectionately calls our program, the Rand Club, featuring me and starring you and Willie. But either way, we will see what happens with Rand Carthon. But the question many Titans fans have, and Wes in Clarksville texted this to us earlier, and it's the question that a lot of Titans fans have. It's that if Rand Carthon comes back, having the number one pick in the draft is an enormous deal. This is an opportunity for the Titans to reset their franchise, whether it's making the number one overall pick in the 2025 draft, and perhaps you're drafting Shedeur Sanders, perhaps you're drafting Cam Ward, perhaps you're drafting Travis Hunter. Either way, the Titans, it's all up to them. They control this draft. They are the number one team. And by the number one team, I mean the worst team, because they have the number one pick. But they've been handed an opportunity to press reset. Can you trust Rand Carthon to make that decision? Has he done enough in his 2 years? Or I know there is some ambiguity with the Mike Vrabel year, but either way, do you trust Rand Carthon, based on what you've seen with him holding the title of general manager, to make a move, whether it's making that pick, trading out of that pick, accumulating picks, making those picks? What has he done for you, Derek, that you have trust in him to be the one to guide this team in what is a pivotal offseason?
I just look at it from this standpoint, is that he inherited a roster that was depleted, completely depleted. And, every so often you may get a GM and a head coach that comes in and they hit with the quarterback, and then all of a sudden that first year you start to see promise. It may be a big jump, maybe a better jump than it was the previous season. But if you get that quarterback and he's that guy, and typically you're getting that quarterback in the first round, and more importantly, the first 10, 15 picks, more like the first 10 picks, 10, 12 picks. You get that guy, it shortens the curve in which you have to truly build this team. Because if you hit on a quarterback, then it expedites the building, because you got that one guy that sort of can mask some of the things that is wrong with your team. We see it across the NFL. The really good quarterbacks, they cover some of the sins of the team in other areas. So first and foremost, you have to get that guy. Listen, I've said this before and I say it again. If I agree that they should come back, I agree with trusting them to make the pick. We will see which direction the Tennessee Titans are going in, because free agency comes before the draft. So we will see the direction. We will know the direction that the Tennessee Titans are ultimately going in based upon what they do in free agency. Now, listen, Rand went out and he tried to buy a team. That's just what he tried to buy, more time. He tried to jumpstart a team. He tried to jumpstart a battery that was dead. You can't jumpstart a bad battery, no matter how many times you hook it up to another car. If the battery is bad, the alkaline and everything is bad in the battery, I don't care how much jumping you're doing, the car is not going to start. Well, that was Rand. And listen, he tried it, didn't work. That's a strike against him. I will give him that. That the moves that he made this year, not all of them came to fruition. Not all of them was something that he was like, okay, that hit. All of them were not like that. Cushenberry, he got injured. He was playing okay, wasn't great, but I understand with the offensive line. Listen, it takes time for the offensive line to build. You had 4 new starters on an offensive line. It takes time for that whole unit to build. So even though Cushenberry wasn't playing well, I'm not going to say, oh, it's a complete waste. I think he was playing good enough. He could have played better. Look at some of the other moves that they made. Some were okay, some were not. Snead, he lasted, 6-7 games, and then we didn't see him no more. Owuzie, he missed a lot of time, came back. He still wasn't that defensive back that we had saw prior to the injury in Cincinnati. Maybe next year's better. So there's a mixed bag in here with the free agencies. There's a mixed bag with the drafts. People, crucified him for drafting Big Sweat in the second round. And I don't hear those people talking no more. I don't hear those people talking now, because based upon what I heard yesterday from the announcers, they were praising the big fella. And rightfully so, because he's played really well and he's learning that position. So they've done J.C. Latham. Does he need to be better? Yes. But see, here's the thing. When you don't like somebody, if whatever they do, if it's not to your liking, you're going to say it's a wasted pick. J.C. Latham wasn't a wasted pick. He's going to be a good player, I believe, in this league. He had his rookie struggles. He did good on some. He didn't do good on others. He did pretty good against was it Henderson from Cincinnati?
Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, Trey. He did pretty good against Trey Henderson. He struggled in other areas, but that's the play of a rookie, up and down.
I think that J.C. Latham started off solid.
Mm-hmm.
He seemed to hit that rookie wall late in the season.
Exactly.
So all and you're hoping that the foundation has been laid,
exactly,
that he will continue to get better. But he was not, was he, did he look like the left tackle of the future for the Titans?
At times, but more than likely, no.
Right.
He didn't. He started off pretty good, struggled, and it was like he was holding on those last couple. Even though he did okay, he was still holding on in a sense. Hopefully next year, as we all know, year 1 and year 2 should be that big jump. And I don't know when people say that, 1 year and then they see the rookie come in and he struggle and they don't take that into account. It's just, no, he's a bad player, so I'm putting that on the GM. J.C. Latham isn't a bad player. He will work his way to being the player he is supposed to be, whatever that player is, but he has shown promise. Okay? You look at, we talked about Sweat. Spears has shown some promise. He just needs to stay on the field. This kid, I mean, he just get hurt when you just blow on him.
But weren't there injury concerns about
it was
Tajay Spears?
But it hasn't been. It was his knee. It hasn't been his knee. It's been concussions and just like weird stuff with him. It hasn't been the knee has been fine.
I don't lump Tajay Spears. Perhaps I'm wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't lump Tajay Spears into the the Caleb Farley category.
Yeah,
where
he hasn't had any of those
significant.
Brand Carthon, maybe he hasn't been on the job long enough, but he hasn't had any of those like Caleb, like drafting guys that just didn't pan out at all in the first 2 or 3 rounds. He hadn't, well, the first 2 rounds. He hadn't had guys like that. But as I've
did draft Will Levis in the 2nd round.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to get to. Give it to you. But as I've given you some things that I think he's done well, them not addressing the right tackle position with a solid to good veteran guy first, and then possibly drafting another guy and letting him work his way in competition and forming some type of competition on the right side. I do fault Rand Carthon for that.
Yeah, I think that was perhaps the biggest blunder we have seen from Rand Carthon so far. Not adequately addressing the right tackle position, thinking that Nicholas Petit-Frere was the answer at that position. By the end of the season, he was inactive.
Yeah, he's not a starting right tackle. He's not a starting left tackle. He's a guy that's going to fluctuate from team to team after a while.
And I wonder if perhaps Carthon thought Bill Callahan would be this magic elixir that would make the right tackle position better. I think I used this analogy at one point several weeks ago, and as I adjust my big thick glasses, I'll do it again. Bill Callahan, the way that it came off, like the way that Titans fans would talk about him early on when they hired him, it reminded me, like, if you ever played like a role-playing game like Final Fantasy or Kingdom Hearts or one of those games, over the course of the game, you get better weapons or better armor. And as you get those better weapons and better armor, they come with points. It's like, hey, if you put on this shield, your defense goes up by 5 points. If you use this sword, your attack power goes up by 6 points. And I'm wondering if people thought Bill Callahan would be like that magic shield, that magic sword. Hey, if you employ Bill Callahan, all of your offensive linemen's attributes will go up by 3 points just by hiring him. Clearly, not even Bill Callahan, who is widely considered one of the best offensive line coaches there is, could not get anything out of these offensive linemen. And Rand Carthon made a big mistake by trusting Nicholas Petit-Frere, among others, to fill that spot.
Well, I think the last 2 years have been a mistake, not addressing the right tackle position, thinking that, because Nicholas has been here the last 2 years, thinking that Nicholas would be, because of his physique, because of, long arm, 6'6", 300-something pound, played at Ohio State, came out the #1 tackle in the country. When he came out, all of a sudden he's not. I mean, you thought that you were going to be able to bring in Bill Callahan and fix whatever that was going on wrong with Nicholas, instead of trying to establish some competition. You didn't establish competition. You're not going to get, majority of the time, if you don't establish competition, you won't get the best out of your team. That's why, you look at teams in college, whether it was Alabama, Georgia now, Ohio State. Why are they so good? Because they go get the best players and they let them compete. And the best one is going to win. And we know for sure that whoever wins, we got the best. The Titans didn't establish that. Belichick talked about this a long time ago. Not letting guys get comfortable in that building. Bringing in guys to compete. No matter who you are, I'm still going to bring in somebody to compete with you. The Titans didn't do that. And I do lay that at the feet of, one, at the end of Vrabel's tenure, he chose to do the same thing that Rand did this year, not address the right tackle position. And it hurt you 2 years ago. It hurt you this season. And for whatever reason, I don't know, you thought, like you said, Adam, bringing in Bill Callahan will get your attribute points up 3 to 5 points. If the guy's got not good, or if the guy doesn't have it in him, I don't care how good of a coach you are. You can't want it more than him. And that's the problem. I think Bill Callahan and Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan, they all wanted it more than Nicholas did. And it's not going to work if you want it more than him. So I put that on you. That one I do put on his feet. I have no problem with doing that.
615-737-1025. So trying to play devil's advocate here for Derek, there is another argument that is commonly made when discussing the job that Rand Carthon has done. And by the way, we have no word on Rand Carthon's job status. There has been, as of 12:19 p.m., there has been no statement released by owner Amy Adams Strunk. Brian Callahan will address reporters at 1:30. That would suggest he will be returning as coach. But there is another counter argument made against Rand Carthon that I want to present to Derek next. Well, I was about to say Willie Donick, but Willie Donick isn't here. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025, 1063, The Game. Hey, Preds fans, don't miss Smashville Live this Thursday night at Brewhouse 100 in Bellevue at 6 p.m. Yes, the Predators have been gone for roughly 6 weeks. They will be back. That's a joke, of course. But they will be back following their game in Winnipeg on Tuesday. And you can find them at Brewhouse 100 in Bellevue at 6 p.m. Player guests TBD. But Smashville Live on Thursday at 6 o'clock at Brewhouse 100 in Bellevue. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you, talking about Ran Carthon. Because as of now, we don't know what the fate of Ran Carthon is. We seem to know the fate of Brian Callahan, but we don't yet know the fate of Ran Carthon. So I am trying to play devil's advocate because Derek and Willie both believe that Ran Carthon should be given one more opportunity to fix what's ailing the Tennessee Titans. And here's the other counter argument I'm looking for right now. Again, the problem with the text line is I have the text highlighted and then more people text in and then
That's
I
a
lose.
good thing.
No,
though.
absolutely. But this is so here it is from an unnamed texter. This is Devil's Advocate Part 2. Texter says John Robinson inherited a bad roster, and it wasn't this bad his first 2 years. So let's talk about this because this is another argument that the anti-Ran crew loves to make. John Robinson was hired in 2016. The Titans were bad in 2016, just as bad as they are right now. John Robinson's first draft, if I have my dates correctly, John Robinson's first draft as Titans general manager, he had the number 1 pick in the draft, just like the Titans do right now. Of course, John Robinson traded out of that first pick and helped rebuild the Titans with the haul that he received by trading that number 1 pick, most notably getting the pick that acquired Derrick Henry. So John Robinson inherited a bad situation. The 2 years before he came, they were 2-14 and 3-13. His first 3 seasons, or actually first 4 seasons, 9-7, 9-7, 9-7, 9-7. They made the playoffs in his second season as general manager in 2017. So Derek, this is me playing devil's advocate again. There's a lot. Look, John Robinson, we know that his drafts at the end were bad. It certainly set the Titans back. Ran Carthon did walk into a messy situation in part, I emphasize this part, in part because of John Robinson. It was not all John Robinson's fault, but John Robinson did not leave Ran Carthon in the best possible position. But John Robinson also wasn't left in the best possible position, and he was able to turn things around quickly. So that would be counter argument number 2. John Robinson was in the same situation as Ran Carthon is and did well early. Ran Carthon has not been able to do that yet.
Okay. Stay with me for a second here. Because those are good points made. And I'm not trying to argue those points because you're right. That 2016 draft, he was able to parlay it. Okay, you're right. But I'm gonna just say something here. Because we're, as humans, we compare things. And in sports, a lot of our debate is comparing. Or opinions is based on what we see in comparing one team to another, whatnot. I look at the 2016 draft. It's sort of, this thing is sort of working out in the same. It seemed like history is repeating itself for the Tennessee Titans. And in 2016, because prior to that, he wasn't a GM. In 2015, he wasn't a GM.
No.
Okay.
It was his first general manager job.
Absolutely. So perfect storm in a sense of you getting the number 1 pick, not that you're a bad team. You're a bad team. You got the number 1 pick. So you draft 2016 in the first 100 picks. You draft a Hall of Famer and a guy that's on the border of being a Hall of Famer, Kevin Byard. Derrick Henry, he's an Hall of Famer. Kevin Byard is sort of like on that cusp of being a Hall of Famer. I think the way, he's played his career, he's a Hall of Famer. It may take him a while to get in, but he's a Hall of Famer. Then you draft an All-Pro in Jack Conklin. But everybody else on that list, they phased out. Everybody on that list, Kevin Dodd, Sharp, Sims, all those guys. Let's look at the second draft that you had. And it wasn't a bust from the sense that, even though the Corey Davis, it was a bust.
We're talking about the 2017
we're talking about the
draft.
2017 draft. It was a bust because he never matched, the production never matched the pick at number 5.
For Corey Davis.
So he was a bust. Or Dory Jackson was a bust. He never performed well here. He had his moments here and there, but he never performed well.
They did get Jonnu Smith in that draft.
They did get
a good season here.
Jonnu Smith had good season, but you chose not to retain him. The same GM that we say is this, second to the great Floyd Reese. You didn't retain him. You let him walk. And where has the tight end position been since then? You haven't had one truly. And y'all complain about Jonnu Smith. And I thought Jonnu Smith was a heck of a player here. I'm not talking about what he did in Miami or what he's doing in Miami. I'm talking about here. He was a good player here.
His final season with the Titans in 2020, he had 41 receptions and 8 touchdowns for the Titans before moving on to the Patriots.
So you allow Jonnu Smith to walk. Taywan Taylor was a no-show. Adoree Jackson, you barely got anything out of. Corey Davis, you did get production, but it wasn't worthy of the 5th round of the 5th pick in the draft. And then everybody under there, they're all gone. Okay, let's look at the 2018. One guy, Harold Landry, is still on this team. Everybody else was a bust. Everybody. Let's look at 2019. You got Jeffrey Simmons, and y'all don't appreciate Jeffrey Simmons now. Y'all on him bad now. Okay, so you got Jeffrey Simmons. You had the best receiver in franchise history. Yes, I'm saying that. He had the potential to be that guy. He would have been that guy. And you traded him away.
Yes, that was a blunder of epic proportions, trading away A.J. Brown.
Nate Davis, no longer on the team. Amani Hooker. I don't know whoever, DeAndre Walker, David Long, no. Okay, and then let's go up. 2020. Nobody on that 2020 draft is on this team.
Correct.
Let's say 2021. Nobody other than Dylan Ratons is on this team from 2021. So let's not make this seem like, he just had 2 bad drafts. Hell no. Every draft was bad with the exception of 1 or 2. Why? Because you did not retain any of those players. None of those players other than Dylan Ratons and Jeffrey Simmons. And y'all don't like Jeffrey Simmons right now. 2 players out of all those drafts are still with this team. The John Robinson. But he knows what he's doing. And I'm not saying he doesn't. But see, it's funny how people do this. It's like, but he knows what he's doing. He had 5 years on the job, but then you look at what he did in the draft, which is how you build your team. He got an F in the draft. Well, I'll give him a D+. He got a D+ in the draft. Not necessarily because of the guys he drafted, but because of the guys they didn't retain. They didn't retain some of these guys that could have helped them now. They could have helped them over the last 2 years.
I do wonder.
Via the draft. I'm saying via the draft.
Right. I do wonder. I would love, let's get back into my nerddom here for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the Choose Your Own Adventure books? Goosebumps,
Yeah.
Goosebumps, Choose Your Own Adventure books. I used to love those books.
Didn't Goosebumps go up to like 120 books or something like that?
Probably. R.L. Stein, he cashed in. He wrote a lot of those books.
Yes.
Made a lot of money. But
they turned into TV shows too. So
right. I love those books when I was younger. And I would love a Choose Your Own Adventure book about what would have happened if the Titans did not trade A.J. Brown. If everything else kind of happened the same way, and maybe it's more complex than that. But just imagine, where do you think Will Levis would be if he had A.J. Brown to throw to? No disrespect to Calvin Ridley, but if he had A.J. Brown to throw to, what would we be saying about Will Levis? The answer might be, hey, he's still not a starting quarterback in the NFL. But I think he would look a hell of a lot better if he had A.J. Brown.
He would. And just think, you allow it, and I said this when it happened. When you allow Corey Davis to walk out this building, you go get the kid out of Atlanta, Julio Jones. You went and got a Julio Jones that was already broken down, but nobody said anything about that either. Like the guys that he brought in, they already were broke down. But you still brought them to this organization and paid them a hefty sum to not play for you or play sparingly, and then he gets on the bad side of the head coach, so he ain't playing as much, and that happened early. So that made me think that probably wasn't the head coach's choice to bring in Julio Jones. It was the GM's choice to do that, because you allowed a guy that just had close to 1,000 yards, that had built a rapport with your quarterback, that was a compliment to your top receiver, and you said, you know what, we don't want to pay him. We're going to go get this guy that's broken down. You see how that worked out for you? Whereas you could have kept both of them, would have made your quarterback, and then the second quarterback you would have brought in, he would have already been set with two guys that have been playing, or you could have added a third guy. But what you did was you said, nope, we don't need him. And then the very next season, he said, nope, we don't need him. And then you got to start all over with the receiver room. And then you add another quarterback to the mix. That's not showing any stability. No stability from the front office and no stability from the GM. But we laud him as he's the best since
Sliced
Floyd
bread.
Reese. He's the best since Floyd, and he could be. I'm not saying he's not, but we're forgetting his warts. Somebody said something on the news this morning, and they were talking about the election. They were talking about 4 years ago how people felt about a certain event that happened and how they feel now. It's funny how when time passes, you forget something so critical and pivotal in American history, and you bypass it. Say, oh, so fine. It's the same way with NFL fans. How quickly do you forget all the mishaps and miscues that put you in a position that you're in now? It's like, oh, it's that guy's fault now. Well, how did we get here? I'm not trying to convince y'all to change your mind. I'm just giving you how things sort of happened in the process. Let us not forget why we are here, because if you forget your past, you're doomed to repeat it again. And it seems like Titans fans, y'all are forgetting what happened in the past about all of this, how he just totally messed the roster up by the ineffectiveness of his draft picks. He did good with going getting free agents. I give him that. His biggest hit was Ryan Tannehill. That was I give him an A+ for that, because that essentially helped save the franchise. But beside that, this roster was eroding slowly, and I don't think people really paid attention to it. You're not going to pay attention to it when the ship is running well. You don't pay attention to what's underneath. You ain't paying attention to what's underneath the water. You ain't paying attention that sometimes, that little part on a boat, it seems to be leaking, but the boat is running fine. We'll just patch it up. No, ain't enough patching up in the world. And that's where this franchise was. They were depleted of talent, and the next guy came in, and he hasn't done a great job. He has his faults too, but let's not make it seem like, oh, they're here because of this guy.
One texter says, why constantly compare Carthon to Robinson? The point is, Amy should have brought someone in as GM with substantial experience and a better resume.
Robinson didn't have any experience.
He did not.
He didn't have a long, lengthy resume
as a general manager. He was also a first-time general manager.
Yeah, but he and Rand had just about the same amount of experience. If you look at Rand,
I would have to go look at his CV.
No, I've looked at it. I've looked at it.
All
John Robinson and Rand Carthon, it seemed like they went down the same path.
They both came from two incredible organizations.
They went through the gauntlet, and they both got GM jobs. So again, I understand y'all. Everyone, there are people that made up their side with keeping Rand. There are some people that made up their side with firing Rand and everybody else. I'm not here to try to convince you otherwise. I'm just giving you why I wouldn't, and comparing the two and say the same grace that I gave John Robinson in the times that it wasn't good, and I was watching these drafts and everybody else was just watching the play on the field, and I'm knowing that eventually this draft is going to catch up with him. But hey, listen, he's doing good. I'm not going to work. Give the same grace over here when you know that this roster wasn't good, people. And I understand that the way you present something may get people to think otherwise, and maybe that was their fault, Adam, that they convinced everybody out there that they were going to be a good team, when in fact you shouldn't have tried to do that.
615-737-1025. We will get to your phones and your texts coming up next. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game. D-Mace, Fingan, Adonic, 1025, 1063, The Game. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, will join us at 1 o'clock ahead of Brian Callahan's scheduled news conference at 1:30, which we will bring to you in its entirety. But before we get there, Jack is from my part of town, East Nashville. He's on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jack, thank you for calling. Please go ahead. Jack, are you there? Jack.
Hang up, Jack.
Call back, Jack.
Call back, Jack.
Trey is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Trey, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, my guys, how y'all doing today?
Good, thank you.
Trey.
Hey, I just wanted to know, all right, Derek and Will said that they would give Rand another year. Adam, I don't know how you feel about that, but from my opinion, I'm like, how much more time does he need? He's been around here 2 years. We've seen what he's brought in. We've seen what he's given away, and the team is still is mediocre. Like, how much time does Rand Carthon need, like, within a football season? Is she going to wait until the middle of the season, next season, to fire him? Like, I don't understand why he should be around. And y'all have a good day, and thank you.
Of course, Trey.
Thank you, Trey. Appreciate it.
Trey is making a point that a lot of people are making, and the point that I agree with. If Amy Adams Strong feels a certain way about Rand Carthon or Brian Callahan, she needs to make sure that she makes that decision sooner rather than later. What you don't want to happen is you don't want Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker and Brian Callahan to be part of the group that selects the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. And then things go awry early next season, middle of next season. You fire Carthon, you fire Callahan. Yeah. Now you're bringing in somebody else with let's presume it's a quarterback, with a quarterback that you didn't draft, that they didn't draft. You don't want that. I think that's what happened with Wisenhunt when he was fired. I think that was a similar situation, if I'm not mistaken. That's what you don't want. If you are going to make this decision on one way or the other, you need to be committed full go. Because I think that Trey's concerns, or I think the concerns of a lot of Titans fans. You keep Carthon this offseason, you keep Callahan, they make the number 1 pick, they get fired halfway through next season, and you're back in this vicious cycle of not knowing what you're doing. So I think that is a legitimate concern for Titans fans.
Yeah, again, I'm not trying to convince Titan fans of the decision that they already made. Either way, whether I'm with you as far as keeping Rand Carthon or against what I'm saying. You've already made your decision, and whatever Amy chooses to do, either you are going to be excited about it or you're going to be fussing and moaning and calling us, which please do, and let us know how you feel. But that's what you're going to be doing. So I just look at it from this standpoint. If you're going to make the change, make the change with everybody. You tried it doing it the stair step way with, getting rid of the GM first, and then, subsequently the next following season after it's done, getting rid of the head coach. You've done that before, and you saw how that hasn't, amounted to success for your team. So if you're going to make changes, then make changes across the board. Head coach, GM, everybody. So the next guy coming in doesn't have to come in like Rand Carthon did, halfway through the process, letting it be their draft and sort of sitting back and letting them take the lead on the draft, and then it end up possibly not being what you necessarily would have done if you were in control of everything, meaning the GM. So you can go back down that route if you want to, and you may just get the same, outcome that you got the last 2 seasons. Because listen, if you do something that you did previously, you do it over again the same way, how do you expect different results? So you would essentially have done if you do it that way, the stair-stepping way, you would essentially have done what you did the first time. Did it work the first time, Amy, or anybody over there? Fan base? Really, I'm talking to the fan base. No, it really didn't work. Okay, so you're asking her to do it again. My thing is, if you're going to fire across the board, do it across the board. So you can start over with everybody. So it's not this next year if things are not going well. Well, man, we got to get a new head coach. He gets to get his guy. And then what happens? This cycle happens over again. So, hey, listen, if he stays, great. Make sure you do what is necessary to make this team a winning team. Do what needs to be done to build this roster back up. And a lot of it will be told with what they do during free agency, how they're going to proceed, I believe, in the draft.
Joey is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Joey, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
All right, guys. So my thing is, when do we start questioning Amy? Because if we go back and look at everything, all these decisions being made, it all comes back to her. She's not holding press conferences and explaining her reasoning behind choosing these coaches and coordinators and bringing in these guys that we all question even before they get here. Like, when do we sit back and say, you know what, we need to hold her feet to the fire and question her and say, look, why are you making all these terrible decisions year after year and you're not being held accountable? Like, that, it blows my mind. Like, we were talking about Rand Carthon and John Robinson and everybody, all these different coaches coming in and not doing well in the first couple of years, but when are we going to hold her accountable? That's all I got, guys, and I appreciate it. I'll hang up and listen.
Thanks, Joey.
Thank you.
And here's the issue. She should absolutely be held accountable, but there's only so much you can do with an owner.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get calls and texts every now and then. She should sell. She should sell. What's that?
Say that 3 times.
Yeah, what's that? She sells seashells by the seashore. Yes, she should sell the team. Well, why would she do that? She makes a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Why would she sell the team? So it's not as easy as saying, well, Rand Carthon's bad, he should be fired, because that's a relatively easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to give him his pink slip. It doesn't happen with the owner. But the owner should absolutely be held accountable, to Joey's point. We've heard her make statements on team affiliated media outlets, their website, those sorts of things. We've talked about how Amy Adams Strunk should at least hold some sort of news conference, but I don't think she's ever held a news conference as controlling owner of the Tennessee Titans. I remember vividly her being at the Brian Callahan introductory news conference, reading a statement and then removing herself from the situation. She is not going to answer questions. We should all want her to answer questions, but she is not going to answer questions. What's probably going to happen is what you've already seen in a few other markets with Jim Irsay or John Mara or Shad Khan. You're going to see the owner put out a statement saying what's going to happen with some, boilerplate stuff that every statement says. Go back and listen from a few weeks ago. It was 2 Fridays ago. Go back and listen to the statement that Jared crafted by putting all of this information into ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
It was unreal how accurate it was. Like, I remember listening to it on our drive home from Fordyce Center Bellevue that day, and I said, are we sure that Amy Adams Strunk didn't just write that and it somehow got leaked to Jared? Like, that's what's going to happen. So Amy Adams Strunk should absolutely be held accountable. We know that she can be a good owner because she was the owner of a good team. But when things go bad, like they are right now, the owner gets targeted, and it would behoove her to make herself available to someone other than Mike Heath. But that's probably not going to happen.
There's only, in people correct me if I'm wrong, there's only in this league, what's it, 32 owners, there's only a handful of owners that speak, that take questions. We know Jerry Jones is one because he's the GM.
Rob Kraft just did.
Robert Kraft, yeah, because Robert's kind of like that old young guy. And so he likes to be out there talking about his team. He's sort of in that mode of Dallas's own
Jerry Jones.
Jerry Jones. He's sort of like Jerry Jones, but not to that far extreme.
Well, Jerry Jones is also the general manager.
Exactly. So he has to
he needs to make himself available. But you're right. Like Jim Irsay is frequently available.
But he doesn't. But he hasn't been talking this year. I don't think he talked much last year.
Woody Johnson with the Jets
every so often.
Jerry Jones, Robert Kraft. Like there are owners who make themselves available. It is rare. Owners don't go out of their way. Mr. Bisciotti does it at year's end. He will speak and he will take. Actually, I think he does take questions, but he tries to stay out of it because he don't want to overstep what the GM and the head coach are talking. So he takes questions, but he likes to defer it to the GM.
Yeah, mainly he just goes to EDC. Exactly. Say, hey, you can talk or
absolutely. So
else.
If y'all are looking for Amy to get out here and take questions, she's not going to do it. Owners don't do. That's not what owners do. Y'all see Jerry Jones doing it, but he's the GM. You may see Robert Kraft doing it, but he's a different owner than what Amy is. Amy's like majority of the owners. They give statements. They stay out of the way. They only interject when they need to. And that's been Amy. She interjected when she needed to at one point in time, and it stabilized the franchise. She interjected again when she felt she needed to with the whole Robinson. Now, the way she probably did it, maybe she would do it differently. She had to do it over. She probably would fire both of them at the same time and restart over. But she didn't. So my thing is this. She's not a meddling owner. She made a really good decision with hiring John Robinson and Robinson hiring Vrabel, and it jump-started it. She made a bad decision by tearing it, how she fired, Robinson and Vrabel. Why do people think that she's meddling? She did once. She made a good decision. She made a bad decision. That's business. Okay? So now if she's going to do it, just fire everybody and start over. Don't do this tier thing because you're going to end up with the same situation or in the same situation that you are in right now eventually.
615-737-1025. Teron Davenport, ESPN, NFL Nation Titans reporter, will join us coming up next ahead of Brian Callahan's news conference, which is scheduled for 1:30. We will bring you that news conference in its entirety. But first, Teron Davenport coming up next. Derek Mason, Adam Bingen, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. D. Mays, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Derek Mason and Adam Vinkin here with you. Brian Callahan, scheduled to address reporters at 1:30. We will bring you his news conference live as soon as it starts. But before we get there, it's Monday at 1 o'clock, which means it's time to talk to our friend Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter. Teron, we're having plenty of conversation, as I'm sure you are as well, about the status of Rand Carthon. We have not seen a statement from Amy Adams-Strunk declaring what's going to happen with anybody, but we've already seen some some owners around the NFL put out statements in support of their general managers. At this time, what are you hearing about the status of Rand Carthon as Titans general manager?
Yeah, I don't think that there is going to be a move made there, to be honest with you. I will say don't be surprised because we know how things have gone before. But just in talking to some of the players, obviously they're only going to say so much, but they have the understanding that, Rand is going to get an opportunity to continue to build. And I think in just some of the other sources here in the building, one other source, I do believe that he's going to be back. But again, you never know. I think he is going to be back.
When you talk to the players, when you talk to your sources, because I'm sure a lot of Titans fans are hearing what you're just saying and they're screaming at the radio. I can think of a certain host who hosts a show from 2 to 6 on the station Monday through Friday. But what are you hearing about why the team is confident that Rand Carthon is still the right person to be the general manager of this team?
Well, the thing that I've gotten is the belief that there is still time to build. What else I've gotten is just the belief in himself, the relationship building that he has. They're looking at some of the things that happened as far as the signing. You point to Lloyd Cushenberry, who, a solid signing, but he was injured, so he couldn't finish. You point to L'Jarius Sneed, who, wasn't playing up to the level that is a true number one shutdown corner, top corner in the league, but he still was playing solid, and he had the injury. So, those are the two that, get brought up. And then I've been pointing to Tony Pollard and Calvin Ridley as well. And then you look at draft-wise, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., being able to find guys later and build depth. And that's really the main thing is what I've been told is the objective is to acquire draft picks and build the roster throughout. And that's something that they haven't been able to do just as far as a young, cheap talent perspective.
Teron Davenport joining us on DVD. Teron, with Brian Callahan scheduled to address reporters within the next 30 minutes, it certainly seems as if though Brian Callahan will be retained as Titans head coach. As you evaluate, and you're going to have more time to do this, but your early evaluation of Brian Callahan's first season as an NFL head coach, what did you like about Callahan as a coach, and where do you see the biggest room for improvement?
The thing I like the most is there's two things, the authenticity and the consistency. And I think, it's very clear that he and Mike Vrabel are two different individuals, right? Mike Vrabel had a different way of leadership. Brian Callahan has his own. And I'm not saying one is right and one's wrong, but they allowed these players to see who they are and they stayed to who they are, right? And I think when you look at the way he was able to tap into the optimism with these guys. I remember talking to Cheeto Awuzie, and he told me that one of the things that he loves about Callahan is no matter what, they still felt like there was something that gave them a chance. They still felt like there was reason for optimism. It never was, and despite this year being as bad as it's been, they never had the feeling that, hey, you know what, it's just time to cancel Christmas, so to speak. So I think that's a good thing. Now, there were some times where I think he probably could have set more of an example, right? Back to training camp, when Jeffrey Simmons got into the fight, hey, you got to kick him out of practice. You know what I mean? Because that's something that you just can't tolerate. So there are some things where there's area for improvement, but I think just being authentic and being consistent, that's a huge start. And that's something that you have to have because these players will see right through it otherwise.
TD, we'll talk with Teron Davenport, discussing the Tennessee Titans and where they go from here. Do you get a sense that Amy, that she knew how depleted of players, or how depleted of superstar players this roster really had? Do you think, from what you've gathered, because everyone, they're pointing at what Rand Carthon did, and listen, I understand that, I get it, but as an owner, you gotta look at this from, sort of like a 3D lens. It's not just this season; it's prior seasons as well. Do you think she really understood how inept this roster was when both Callahan and Rand took over?
Yeah, I think that's really the big question, and that's kind of the thing that they have to help her see a little bit more. I would imagine she did see it, just because the John Robinson firing, it wasn't just because, A.J. Brown, took the belt off and gave him a spanking. There were other things that led into that. You had, your first and second round pick handed jobs in year two, and they promptly turned the jobs over to rookies that year, Roger McCreary and Nicholas Petit-Frere. So, I mean, I think when you look at that, you have guys who took jobs over, and I think she understands it, but I don't know that it's as clear, right? And I think that clarity is really what's going to allow this current regime to get back for another year. And to me, the big thing to me, in my opinion, was there was mismessaging. I think it should have been established through the media, through to the fans, that, hey, look, you're striving to win, but this is a reload, a rebuilding year. And I think so many of the free agent acquisitions, that were done to build up for the years of depleted draft classes, where you have, 2 or 3 guys remaining from 3 draft classes. I think free agency was done to offset that, but that set a different kind of imaging, so to speak, to where hey, look, they're signing free agents. They're going for the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, you're right. Because I looked at the draft quickly over the last, say, 6, 7, 8 years. And that period from 2016 to 2020, when ultimately, or was it 21? Ultimately, he got fired. 22. Yeah, 22. Out of all those drafts, they got 3, 4 people left from all those drafts. And that's why I look at it and say, listen, she had to have known that it was going to take some time for this team to reach a point where they can start winning consistently, because you can't win in this league if you don't have young talent. And the Titans haven't been able to accumulate and keep young talent. So from me saying that, what do you think they do in this year's draft? Will we get a better picture as free agency starts to happen, or we'll get a clear picture of what they're doing even before that, in regards to, are they going to pick, or are they going to sort of try to accumulate draft picks and move out of that number 1 spot?
Yeah, well, to your point about the young talent, this organization, they re-signed 1 first round pick out of 6. Okay, 1 out of 6. It's tough when you have that situation, but I mean, the general idea has consistently been, what they want to do is accumulate draft picks. That was the big thing in the Hopkins trade, and that's why that deal was made. That was the big idea in the Ernest Jones, the 4th trade, was to get that 4th round pick. They want to accumulate picks because they want to acquire young talent. But that being said, there's an understanding that this organization isn't just a quarterback away, but I think, and I right before we got on this call, I was watching Arizona versus Colorado. Shedeur Sanders is hand in glove fit for this offense, but they're going to have to really supplement it. And I think free agency, what they do, obviously T. Higgins would be the guy to go get receiver wise, but if they add a free agent receiver, that's going to tell you, okay, look, they're gearing up to make their quarterback have a better situation. And, it comes down to receiver or edge in free agency. And when you look at this draft, obviously Abdul Carter is the best one, but remember they draft at the number 3, so it's 35. They'll draft in the second round, so the number 3 pick in the second round, and that's where a guy like Kyle Kennard. So you could load up. I think really what they do in free agency is going to tell you what they're going to do in the draft, but I wouldn't be surprised if they trade back, because you see this Cam Ward interest being drummed up, and if you notice, it's not by anybody who has ties to the building, right? And there's reasoning for that, because teams want to be able to, like agents, they want to drum up interest for the possibility of a team, trading up to get them. And also, I wouldn't be surprised if that starts coming out that, from in the building, that they're interested in Cam Ward to entice a team like the Browns, who seem to be interested in Ward, to move up and get him.
Now, obviously, we talked a bit about the draft, whatnot. Now, in regards to the coaches, we said what we needed to say about the GM and whether they keep him or not, and it seems like they're keeping the head coach. They don't seem like they're making a move there. But I'm sure after the season that they had, there has to be some changes being made within the coaching staff. And I know everyone would point to Coach Anderson, but I'm not 100% sure that it will be Coach Anderson. I think it may be someone else. And the reason I say that is because I think the last time Callahan spoke of Coach Anderson, he spoke of his team's improvement in the special teams area. That's why I sort of lean toward him saying, okay, as a first-year coach, it was bad at the beginning in certain areas. It's gotten better. Our roster needs to get better, but that's gotten better. And I'm going to give him another shot at this.
Yeah, well, this is where, like, being able to bring in a guy like Justin Hardy, right? It's the signing that a lot of people didn't even bat an eye at, but you notice he came on, and I remember talking to him, and he was on his Malcolm X. He kept saying, man, we're going to get this better by any means necessary. That's what he would say every time I would ask him. So you look at getting a guy like that helped the special teams. And I said all that to say that was a good job by Rand in the front office, finding him and bringing him in to be a difference maker. And you look at the change. I mean, obviously, the linebackers, right? You didn't get that good play from linebackers, and that was a lot of times, them being out of gaps. That kind of led to a lot of these long runs that they gave up, along with obviously poor angles from the safety. So, I mean, there could be something there. I don't think Denard Wilson is in jeopardy. If you want to go like fall guy for the offense, I mean, Bo Hardegree, Nick Holtz. Not that I say either one of them should be fired, but those are options. But I wouldn't be surprised if the whole thing is brought back and given another opportunity.
Teron Davenport joining us on D-Mace, Vingan, and Dunnick. Teron, what was the most interesting thing you heard out of the locker room today when you were interviewing players?
Will Levis. He said that Karma is going to find their way to get back to the Titans. I thought that was interesting that he said that. And then also, when I asked him about being able to process things before it happens, as opposed to always having to answer afterward, and he said that that's something that he does have to work on. He felt like the processing sped up, but it still has to have improvement. So that's probably the most interesting thing is Will Levis himself. I thought it was cool talking to a lot of the players, though, because, I mean, Jeffrey Simmons, he had something that really stood out when he said, this season needs to push everyone, not just the players, but the coaches to work harder and make sure that they're not in this situation next year.
Teron Davenport, ESPN, NFL Nation, Titans reporter, joining us here. Teron, I know you need to get to the Brian Callahan news conference. We look forward to hearing it. Talk soon.
All right, talk to you. Appreciate it.
Teron Davenport joining us on the program, 615-737-1025. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game.
Hey, this is Derek Mason. You heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time now. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution to shed some extra pounds, only to face disappointment. All right? We don't call them resolutions around here. Set a goal. But I know sometimes you come up short on those goals. We all do it, losing extra pounds, especially when you jump into the new year and you've been partying and everything and you're trying to get that weight off. Stick with it. Stick with it. That's all I will advise you to do. But at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands that frustration of this cycle, and that's why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and helps address the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you. That's why I said, don't lose faith when you set a resolution or a goal, because the good people at Cool Springs MD will help you achieve that goal. So connect with them, Dr. Lodge at Cool Springs MD, today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, Brian Callahan will address reporters in roughly 10 minutes. We will bring that to you live. But before he takes the podium, and we're expecting him to be retained as Tennessee Titans head coach for now. It depends on what happens.
You said for now.
For now. It depends on what happens with other positions.
Yeah.
But for now, Brian Callahan, it appears, is safe.
And Rand is safe for now.
For now. That's the operative phrase, for now. But Derek, as a quick preview of what we're about to hear, what are you expecting to hear from Brian Callahan? Are you expecting him to announce some staffing changes? What do you think you're going to hear from him, and what are you hoping to hear from him?
I don't think he's going to. I would be surprised if he's specific about coaches that he's not going to retain. I think what he's going to say is, just like any head coach, especially when you proceed to have, remained on the post, we are in evaluation stage. We're going to evaluate each one of our coaches just like we're going to evaluate our players. A coach that I think is fearful of his job, or know that next year might be it, or that's like, hey, next year is either you do it or we're getting rid of you. If you already know that, then you're making changes now, which means you in your mind had already made the changes before the season ended, and you're just executing it today. That's what that means to me. If you fire somebody today, that means that you know your job is on the line. Like, you know it for sure. And you need to do something right now to sort of squash any sort of flames that may be, or douse any flames that may be out there in regards to your job. I think smart coaches, what they do in situations like this, they're like, hey, listen, we're going to evaluate our coaching staff. That's what we're going to do. Just like we're going to evaluate our players. That's like asking them, is this player coming back? I don't know. We got to evaluate them. So a smart coach, a coach that knows what he's doing, will say, hey, listen, or a coach that is not in fear of his job will say, we're going to evaluate our coaches, and we will, basically let you know once we've done that. But I can't see him saying today, we're going to make a change at that spot. He's going to say there's going to be changes made, obviously, but he has to sit down, evaluate his coaches, and then make the change. That's what I expect to hear. I expect him say we need to get better in certain areas. This didn't happen. You had a quarterback situation. It was up and down. We're evaluating all that stuff going into the offseason. We're going to earmark what we need. The season wasn't what we believed it would be, or we thought it would be. It was a disappointment. They're going to say all that stuff that all teams say. I don't expect him to fire anybody at the podium.
I think we're going to hear that Colt Anderson is out of a job. I
You
think
might.
I think that is the easiest decision. And I heard Big Joe Dubin on my way into the station today said, "Who cares about Colt Anderson? We want major changes." Well,
Colt Anderson is a major change. He is the head. He is a coordinator. That's a huge change. Coordinators, defense, offensive, special teams, that is a huge change.
I could see other changes coming in the next few days. I do think that we will see at least one change announced in just a couple of minutes. And I think it's going to be Colt Anderson, because I just think that with what happened with special teams at the beginning of the season, it played a big role in where the team was, and Will Levis did too. But special teams was right behind Will Levis in terms of the reasons why the Titans ended up where they were, especially at the beginning of the season. Things might have gotten better later in the season, but just like with Will Levis, we were comparing it to how bad it was at the beginning of the season, which made it look better by comparison. So my prediction is that Brian Callahan will announce that Colt Anderson is out as special teams coordinator.
If he does that, that means he knows his tail is on a hot seat. He knows it. If he goes out and fire, which means he already decided in his mind that he was going to fire Colt Anderson before last game, and probably even before that game. So this is not something that I think he's going to come up to the podium and say, oh, we're going to fire Colt Anderson, and didn't already have that as a check mark to do once the season ends. I think if indeed he does that, just like I think if he keeps him, I think that's a decision that was made even prior to last night's game.
It might be. Here's one thing I'm hoping for that's not related to Brian Callahan. I'm hoping that Brian Callahan isn't the only major player in terms of coaching, management, etc., that speaks to what the hell happened this season.
He may just
We're going to hear Brian Callahan in just a few minutes, but I hope that he is not the only one that we hear from, but we shall see. 615-737-1025. Brian Callahan, Titans head coach, will address reporters at 1:30. We will bring that to you live. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game. D. Mays, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, awaiting Brian Callahan. We will bring him to you live as soon as he steps to the podium at St. Thomas Sports Park. Derek, quickly, what did you make of some of the other moves around the NFL? Gerard Mayo fired, Doug Peterson fired, Shane Steichen keeping his job, Trent Baalke keeping his job as GM in Jacksonville despite Doug Peterson losing his job, the Giants Brain Trust keeping their jobs, all of those things. Anything stand out to you?
The Giants one, because of, not necessarily because, I mean, I'm sure Giants fans wanted to change, but like, y'all gave us an inside look at the decisions y'all were making on two critical guys within your organization, and to watch y'all make the wrong mistake. It was the wrong mistake as you were talking about it, and everybody was watching it like, yeah, that's what y'all about to do. That's the wrong move to make. When they chose to go away from Saquon Barkley and put all their eggs in the Daniel Jones basket, and how it has completely backfired. But they gave him another year to fix it.
John Mara said he had a statement, really, saying that they were coming back. Then he had a quote that said, "Better not take too long because I've just about run out of patience. I'm going to have to be in a better mood this time next year." No pressure, Brian Daboll and Joe Shane. But there are, we're waiting to see some other things. It looks like Antonio Pierce might be back as coach of the Raiders. He's addressing reporters.
Okay.
Just like Brian Callahan is about to address reporters.
Shane Steichen,
the whole thing in Indianapolis is very strange.
Yeah, it's just like, they're just a weird team. Like, over the last since Andrew Luck has left, decided to retire, that has been an organization that has been like, they've been in a weird place because they hadn't been bad enough to get a top 5 pick, I don't think. And they hadn't been good enough, consistently to think that there's enough promise that they'll eventually get to where they want to go. And I'm just talking about Indianapolis fans. They're just in a weird space right now.
Yeah, the thing about the Colts is that every year it's like, hey, look out for the Colts. Yeah. And it's like, okay.
Look at that aging quarterback that they just brought in.
Right. Like, it's always like the Colts. They're like the training camp champions every year. It's just like, hey, you better watch out for the Colts. Did you hear about the Colts? The Colts going to be good. But they're never good. Yeah. They haven't been good in a long time.
That's the weird part about it, is that, that one is weird. And, why they didn't go away from Shane Steichen, I don't know.
Especially with everything that happened with Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, like that whole debacle, like you bench him and then you bring him back. It was just weird. Jacksonville's is different. It's like weird too. You just fired your coach, but you kept the GM that went and got the coach and the coach before that, but you keep the GM. That doesn't make sense. Like, Jacksonville, what are you doing? So you think this time he's going to find the right coach? You better hope Ben Johnson, chooses to want to coach Trevor Lawrence, because that's ultimately probably what they're waiting on, is to see what Ben Johnson is going to do. And I'm pretty sure there are other teams out there that are wanting, Ben Johnson's services, because obviously he's the hottest guy on the market right now.
Here's a really great stat. Speaking of Trent Baalke, there have been 10 NFL head coaches fired during or after their first season with the team in the last decade. Trent Baalke hired 3 of the 10. Jim Tomsula, Chip Kelly, and Urban Meyer. Maybe Trent Baalke shouldn't be making these decisions then. But if you're a Titans fan, I'm sure you're not upset.
Yeah, you don't care. You
that the Jaguars are in disarray.
You're like, Shad Khan, keep Trent Baalke, and y'all keep doing what y'all doing.
It appears Mike Vrabel is headed to New England. There is no reporting of that officially, but it seems like all signs are pointing to Mike Vrabel.
And that one doesn't make sense. Like, you had an opportunity. I know it was contractual. I'm sure that it was in his contract, but you had a chance to get Vrabel last year, and it didn't happen. Now, were you bind to a situation where you couldn't get out of? I don't know, but that doesn't make sense either, because you even said you didn't set him up. Basically, you didn't set him. It wasn't an ideal situation for him. That one doesn't make sense either.
What do you make of Mike Vrabel as presumed head coach of the New England Patriots. He has the quarterback in Drake May. There's obviously the history between Mike Vrabel and the New England Patriots, but that is not a good team. Now, hopefully in the draft for them, they start getting better. But what do you make of the fit? Ignoring the fact that it's Mike Vrabel going back to the Patriots, if that is indeed what happens, what do you make of the fit for Vrabel and the football operation?
What I will say is this. Mike Vrabel and his staff, if he chooses, because I'm sure he'd choose to retain some of those guys that he had here with him. Mike Vrabel didn't prove that he could hire someone to develop a quarterback. I'm going to say that again. Mike Vrabel proved that he couldn't hire someone, because that's not Mike Vrabel's deal, developing quarterbacks. That's not his deal. He didn't hire anyone that could improve the quarterback play. He didn't. You went and got Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill was already established, okay? That's not much you needed to do at Ryan Tannehill. But you had an opportunity with younger quarterbacks, and you didn't make it happen. What makes you think that he's going to get the right person to continue to mentor and develop Drake May? That's the question that people need to answer. They're just looking at Vrabel as he's the tough old school coach, and he demands respect, and he has some good years in Tennessee. But no one looks at his development or his coaching staff's development of young quarterbacks. They were horrible at that. So if you're going to hire Mike Vrabel, you better make sure he brings in a hell of an offensive coordinator, not one of his buddies.
So not Tim Kelly.
Yeah. Hire one of his offensive coordinators, hire a good offensive coordinator and a good quarterbacks coach, guys that are known for developing quarterbacks. That's what he needs to do. If he does that, then he'll be great for New England. He embodies the culture,
yes,
at New England and everything. But if he can't get someone to develop a quarterback, why even draft? Why even bring him?
It's interesting to hear some of the coaches that are getting interviewed. Ron Rivera is getting interviewed.
Yeah, that's crazy.
There are rumblings about John Gruden getting back in the game.
Even Pete Carroll.
Well, Pete Carroll's name's been out there for a little bit, but I feel like John Gruden's name is starting to surface. He was blackballed by the league for a few years. So
Rex Ryan trying to throw his name in the hat.
Did you hear what Rex Ryan, I think it was interviewed or is going to be interviewed for the Jets job. And he said something to the effect of, if Aaron Rodgers comes back, it's not going to be a country club under my watch. I mean, you played for Rex Ryan briefly. What do you make of the idea of Rex Ryan not having I think that reaction says everything.
I'm just going to laugh. Maybe it's different the second go around. I'm just going to laugh. That's all I'm going to say. Maybe it's different on the second go around.
I can't get
Did you go get a sandwich?
Yeah, get a snack. It's time to get a snack. I can't get past the veneers with Rex Ryan. Every time I see him on television, I was like, I know that your mouth is moving, but I can only see those teeth. That's all I can say. It's like that scene in Austin Powers with the guy with the mole. It's like moly, moly, moly. Oh, I see every time Rex Ryan says something. It's like, look at those veneers, man. Those teeth are too perfect. They're too perfect. But yes, I'll be very interested to see what happens with the Titans. Brian Callahan running a little bit behind. See, I would fire him for that alone.
And what this may okay.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No. And maybe I'm looking too much into this, but Brian Callahan's always late to his pressers.
He is, isn't he?
But could this be a situation where he's informing individuals that their job is no longer available?
It's a good question. While we wait, Diane on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHoney.com, says she completely disagrees about firing everyone across the board. Fire Carthon and Brinker, then let the new GM decide on Callahan. Okay, Brian Callahan is at the podium.
That's on too. I'm freezing.
Well, it's cold outside. It's snowing still.
Just to start off, I think that this season in and of itself, obviously disappointing. Our goal was to try to win as many games as we could, find ourselves in position. We're always trying to compete to play in the playoffs, trying to compete for our division, and obviously fell well short of those goals this season. A lot of things that I have to be better in. I've had a lot of mornings, this meetings this morning with players, and just getting a lot of feedback and evaluating and reflecting on what I can do better. And there's a lot of things that I can do to help our process. A lot of things I can do better as a head coach, as a play caller, as an offensive coach. We have to do better really all the way across the board, coaching wise, from the playing perspective. Things got sideways for us this year when it came to taking care of the football. Penalties, and negative plays. And then when, the penalties and sacks and things along those lines offensively killed us. We didn't do a good enough job in the red zone, preventing people from scoring touchdowns when they got down there. And the combination of all of those things put us in a pretty good hole that we had trouble climbing out of. And competitive games early in the season that we gave away and didn't give ourselves a chance. And then we had to fight all season long to try to climb out of a hole. And ultimately didn't get there. We had to deal with some handful of injuries, our preferred secondary that we started off with. The guys that we were counting on to play a lot of snaps, I think together only played about 100 snaps. And so that didn't materialize the way we had hoped it would. But in the meantime, we had a lot of guys step up, and I still thought we played pretty good pass defense over the course of the year with the guys that stepped up to play. But ultimately, got to continue to find ways to get better. We got to eliminate the things that we did poorly. We got to find ways to keep adding good players to our roster, which I think we added good players last year. We're going to add another cycle full of good players, and then we got to keep pushing forward. And ultimately, I have to do a better job as a head coach, so we're not in this position again at any point. Don't have any interest in repeating this season, although there's lots of things to glean from it, lessons-wise. I don't want to be here again or be in this position again, and I'm fully determined and resolved to get us to a point where we don't have to talk about how many games we've lost. We can talk about how many games we've won, and that's my goal to get there. With that, I'll let you guys get going.
You mentioned feedback. What was some of the feedback that you were getting in these meetings?
I just just what things were good, what guys liked, what did they respond to, what can I do better? How can I be better for them? That's my job, is to find ways to be better for our football team. And one of the things that I know I need to do a better job of is because of the difficulty of being in charge of calling plays and running the offense, is I spend a lot of time on offense, and I got to do a better job of spending my time more with the guys on the other sides of the ball and special teams and on defense, and just making myself more available and visible to them. Even though I spend a lot of time with the offensive guys, one of the things I need to do a much better job of moving forward is still continuing to build the same style relationships with the guys on defense as well. So that's something that I, my first year and trying to get the offense off the ground, need to do a better job of that moving forward.
Is there potential in that, Brian, that you wouldn't call plays at any point?
That I would not. I think I'm humble enough and open enough that if that's a change that need to be made, I would make it. Right now, though, I do feel good about that process. I love calling plays on game day. It's part of where I find a lot of joy in the football process. But, I'm never going to close the door on something if it makes us better. But as of right now, no, I continue to anticipate to see myself calling plays and doing that part of the operation, because it is the part that I enjoy quite a bit. And I love game days calling plays. So, but again, if it makes us a better football team and I need to devote my resources elsewhere, I'm always open to those thought processes. So, but right now, no, I don't anticipate that changing.
Changes that you anticipate, or when will those decisions?
Working through that this week. Today has kind of been more player focused with all the guys' exit meetings and all those things. I'll be meeting with the coaches over the next couple of days and getting the same type of feedback I got, from the players, and we can talk about. We had more in depth things with the coaching staff stuff, but those things. If we head on making any changes, it'll be as the week goes along after I meet with everybody.
Quarterback situation at the end of this season and heading forward into 2025?
Well, we got one quarterback under contract. The other two are free agents, and we're in position to potentially draft quarterback. We're in position to, with the cap stability and flexibility we have, to potentially sign a veteran quarterback. And so we're going to explore every avenue to do that. There's a lot of ways you can do this process, and we'll unturn every stone to find out what the best one is for us. There's a lot of work to be done between now and those decision-making times. But I think it's very clear that that's a position that we have to do our due diligence on and our work on, both in free agency and in the draft. So with that being said, too, Will has to keep his same mindset. He's got to keep getting ready to play. He's got to keep getting better. I still believe in the tools that he has and his ability to be a good quarterback. But I was very straightforward with him that it's very likely that there'll be somebody else in here competition wise at the very minimum. So that's a position that we'll be looking at.
Look at the quarterback draft.
I'll come back, but
specifically this year. I know the word is it's not as loaded as maybe years past. When you go into a situation like this where you have the number 1 overall pick, is there a specific quarterback that needs to really stand out in what you're looking to mold as a head coach where you could go that direction?
I know there's a lot of, and truth be told, there's a lot of smart people out there that have a jump on this process ahead of me. I haven't spent much time scouting, but I will be pouring every ounce of that into that draft class and seeing what it looks like, what those players look like, what they provide, what their strengths and weaknesses are. The other part of it that's critically important is the person. How do they function? What's their leadership style? What's their mental capacity? What's their nervous system, if you will? How do they function in the game and as a player? Those things are really important, and those don't come until we get a chance to talk to guys and bring them in and go see pro days and all that. So this process is in its infancy. It is very, 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 very early. So to make any proclamations, I think for us at this point on whether a class is good or not, I think is very premature. And we got to do our due diligence on all of the players that'll be available to us. And again, the only benefit is there's nobody in front of us. So we get to pick who we like the best, or there's also a lot of other options that go in there as well. But very early on, and there'll be a lot more time to talk about those things as we move forward. So go ahead, Buck. I'll let you come back.
What skill set in that room are you looking to add that you might not otherwise have?
As far as
quarterbacks?
Yeah, I think we need, we need to turn the ball over less. That's a part of it. Got to take less sacks. That's also a part of it. We got to find a mix between the explosive play rate that we had, which was pretty good as the season went along. We got better there versus the completion part of it. We're still moving the offense. There's a leadership component to it as well. That's important, that you're trying to find a guy that can elevate the rest of the team as well. That's a huge part. Sometimes that's with the veteranness because they've played and they have the respect. Sometimes if it's a young player, they got to learn how to do that. But there's a lot of things about the quarterback position, the play that we got this year that was good. But we need much more of it, and we need more consistency. And I think that's the most critical part is that sort of down to down, game to game consistency and execution where, we don't have the ebbs and flows and lulls and moments of really good execution. And then these moments where we sort of disappeared, and the quarterback plays a large role in a lot of those processes.
Ryan and Chad are back in their current roles as of now?
Again, I've been focused solely on the players getting out of the building this week. I know that's all the conjecture out there. Until someone tells me differently, yeah, I do. But again, I haven't had those conversations with anybody yet. I've been in my office meeting players all morning. So anything else that's out there, I wouldn't be aware of. So other than that, I expect business as usual.
Maybe the offensive line this year and the way it played, how much different could things look next season?
As far as the offensive line?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a really big opportunity for JC to continue to improve. I thought he played really well over the course of the season, and it's a really important offseason for him, to really take that next step and be the caliber of player I think he's capable of. The guy that doesn't get probably nearly enough credit for his improvement is Peter. Peter really played well this season. I'm really, really happy and excited about him. So that I feel very good about that part of it. Lloyd's coming off his injury. But I think the guys that stepped in for him did a nice job. Danny Brunskill and Corey Levin both did some good things. And then obviously our right side, Dylan's a free agent, and we'll see where that goes. And then we need to get a right tackle. I would ultimately see you're probably going to, for sure see a new right tackle here in some way, shape, or form. You might see a few, depending on how that shakes out again early in the process. But I would see that we're definitely going to have to add more players up front in whichever way they come, free agency and the draft. To continue to build the line, because from the center on left, I feel really good about it, and then from right guard and right tackle with a pending free agent, we're going to have to find ways to keep improving that. But I like the growth that we showed. I like the things we did improve on, and it's a group that I think can improve even further and pretty rapidly. I think as we add some more to it.
What was your conversation like after yesterday with Amy, and what did she want to know about your plan moving forward, and what did you want to impress to her about your plan?
I haven't had that conversation with her yet. That's upcoming. Again, this morning has been focused on the players and getting everybody out of the building with the exit interview. So that might be for another day. But yeah, that meeting will come.
As you talk to the players and for these exit interviews, I know you have a set goal, a set plan.
Yeah.
What do you dictate to them as the plan?
It's a lot of it's more individual as far as what I saw that was good, where we can get better, what more I can get from them, and what the expectation is. So those are all things I try to go through as best as possible with those guys. And you can't meet with every player, right? It's just there's too many guys and not enough time. But you try to meet with the young players, your rookies, especially to prep them for what this offseason is going to be like for them, because it's the first time they're going to be sort of on their own, without training for a combine or a draft. And then what the expectation is, and how to navigate that successfully. And then there's some free agent guys that we met with that contracts are up that we had conversations with about, moving forward and hoping to re-sign and all those things. And it's probably a little bit less in depth than that. Those conversations really start when you're coming back in April and you're really evaluating with the players the scheme from the year before.
Facing surgery upcoming, or guys that maybe not be ready for the offseason?
As of right now, nothing that should prevent anybody. I'm sure guys can get some cleanup stuff, but nothing that would, as of right now, nothing that prevents anybody from being ready outside the guys that are already in the process.
Hearing feedback from the defensive guys that you hinted to earlier about needing to be more involved over there?
No, not at all. I mean, it's one of those things that I know and I feel, and it's things that I'm aware of. It's just, that first year trying to get everything the way you want it on one side. And, but it's something that I'm aware of, and I knew that was part of something that I needed to be better at. And, because I appreciate those guys on defense, and I really enjoy being around them. And, because I'm running a lot of the offensive meetings, I'm doing the installs, I'm running all that process. And, when we meet, they're meeting. And so I got to just do a better job of letting other guys on offense, do their parts and do that, and then be available for them as well. It's something that I think that would help them just see me more and feel me more. And I think it's important for us. So it's something I plan on doing.
Reasons why you guys didn't win more. Are you surprised that at those results, especially in the context that there's 6 other new head coaches in the league this year? They all went into different situations, obviously, but some were as grim as yours, and they averaged over 8 wins per situation.
I think it's hard to compare. I mean, all those teams are in different spots, different players, different rosters, different situations. I didn't anticipate us winning 3 games. It wasn't where I started out thinking we would be. And, ultimately it's my job to help us win more, and I got to do better than I did. And I don't worry too much about the other teams out there. Everyone's got their problems. Everyone has their issues they're dealing with. Even some of the teams that do win have issues they're dealing with that aren't mine. And I don't try to spend too much time worrying about what else is compared to me or what else isn't. I just try to do the best job I can, and clearly I have to do a lot better than I did.
Do you think it was a mistake setting the expectations as high as they were for this season?
I don't remember setting expectations.
This was going to be going in, but the goal was to compete. Do you think?
Oh yeah, no, I won't walk back on that one at all. I think we could absolutely have been, we were competitive, and we got ourselves into a hole that was hard to climb out of. But yeah, I won't walk back. I did think we would be a competitive team, and I think we were at points. And we just got to find ways to play better football than we did. And ultimately we gave away games. We got to do a better job of not doing that. And that's my job to do. And I got to make sure that gets fixed. So we gave ourselves a better chance to be the competitive team I think we're capable of. And but right now, your record is what it is. I mean, we're a 3-win team. Do I feel like we should have been better than that? Of course I do. But we're not. And the reality is that we're a 3-win team. We're picking first in the draft, and that's not the spot that when I stood up here in my opening press conference, I was like, yeah, this is where I can't wait to be having this one today where we're talking about 3 wins. So that's just all a part of it. I do have a lot of beliefs in what our team's capable of, and ultimately we didn't do it. And I still think we're capable of being much better than we are, and we got to keep building that.
Ryan, do you think it was a mistake for your general manager to say you guys have checked every box on offense, starters and depth? That set certain expectations.
Sure, I understand that. I think that we did feel like we had put pretty good effort into trying to get ourselves in position to be competitive. And when you sign, we want to be a draft and develop football team. That's what we want to do. And In the meantime, though, we needed to supplement with free agency. I don't think that any of us are under any guises that this is how you build a team all the time. You don't want to do that all the time. But we had to. We had to find ways to get some more players to inject some, ability onto the roster and keep us moving forward. And some of them worked well, and some of them, are kind of incomplete. We don't really know on some of the guys because of the injuries. But I did feel good at the time about where we put holes, where we plugged them. Obviously, we couldn't fix every possible problem, but I thought we did our best to try to do that and feel the roster that was going to help us be competitive. Now, again, the results don't speak for it, and we didn't do that. It didn't ultimately come to fruition, but I think that's ultimately where I land on it.
Fix the holes. The consensus by a lot of people was that there might have been more holes that could be fixed in one off season.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like that all the remaining holes can be fixed in this one off season to make this team contender?
We're going to try. We're going to try to do as much as we can to fit our needs, to find the players that can help us, to improve the areas of our team that need to be improved. And then so that's your goal every year. Are you gonna hit every single one of them? That's hard to do, but we're damn sure going to try, and we're going to try to fit every possible way we can do to improve our team. And we got to nail the draft. That's a huge part. You want to be a draft and develop team, you got to nail the draft. I think we've done a good job of that, of finding players that have contributed. And you got to be great in supplementing free agency. You got to sign the right guys, the right type of guys, and guys that if you're in free agency, you pay more money than you'd like to because that's the way the market works. But we're sure as hell going to try to fit fix every problem we can fix as quickly as we can fix it.
So how do you prioritize special teams in that aspect too? Because I feel like personnel came into play early on in the season. You brought in some guys like Justin Hardy, and we've seen, that kind of take a jump. But do you look at that in a different way now in your second year?
Yes, I think yes, I do look at it in a different way. I don't know that what we did early in the year was all that dramatic of a difference, in terms of the players. But I do think it is important, and having a guy like Justin Hardy and Luke Gifford, those guys are important members of that unit, and then they make it go. The other part of it that I think is important was that our young players were playing more and more and got better. I think guys like James Williams and Cedric Gray and Bryce Oliver, those guys really came on for us. And now you have what I think is a good young core of special teams players that are sort of our type of guys.
You went through like the personnel process. I know you and Rand, you guys talk every day, as you said, but what was the involvement like for Chad Brinker? Like how did that work?
Chad was involved in all of it. Chad's he's scouted before for a long time. That's what he's done. His background is in personnel. It's in scouting, but he's also got unique experiences, in the business side of it with his time in Green Bay, and has a really good feel for what the structure of an organization should look like. And yeah, it's really been the three of us sort of all the way along, from the time I got here and all the way through the season is. We've all sort of worked on the same things, and Chad has his responsibilities and Rand has his, and I have mine, and we all come together and try to make the, whenever decisions are made or whenever we need to do something, that we're all on the same page, and we have been all year. That part's been really, really fun for me. I've enjoyed that part because I think Chad's got unique experiences, unique perspective, and so does Rand. I think they're both really unique people. I'm glad we have them.
You guys navigate through? Because I'm sure there had to have been some challenges or
Sure.
disagreements, so to speak. How did you guys navigate through that?
I think you guys can't be afraid to have a hard conversation. You state your opinion, and you say what you believe in, and you got to come to a consensus. And then whenever the consensus is reached, whether you ultimately are in full agreement or not, you move forward because that's the decision that we've made together. I think that's the way most decisions get made in good business is you take the information, you state your opinion, and then you decide what's the best way to move forward. And even if you're not the one that's fully on board with it, or you think another opinion, once you make the decision, you go, and it's our decision at that point, and we're all a part of it, and we all own it. So that's how it's always worked, and I think it's worked pretty well.
Cincinnati, you guys won 3 games the first year as well, right?
I think it was 2. Yeah. Sure.
You don't have Joe
Right.
How much more?
Well, we don't know.
challenging
We don't
is
know that yet.
Year 2, not having that cornerstone at the pocket?
Just in terms of like what
You knew what you were building your team around.
in year 2, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And,
yes.
and you don't right now.
Oh well, the first year we didn't have Joe the first year either though. That was a different. We it was very much similar to this where we ended up selecting Joe in the second season. So that's where the difference will be, and hopefully we get ourselves in a spot where we have a very clear picture of what that looks like. Come whenever it is, end of April, once the free agency and the draft are over, we have a very clear picture of what that position looks like.
Staying with the quarterback part of it, obviously development. Will was somebody that you set out to continue to work with and stuck with throughout the course of that. Now that you've had some opportunity to reflect on how that all went or didn't necessarily go to plan, is it just as simple as the turnovers or what most went wrong there?
The turnovers are a big part of it. The other thing, there's some more finer tuned things that Will and I talked about today, just things that he's got to really focus on this offseason. And part of that's the footwork and the pocket movement, and making sure, because he's really smart and he sees things and he understands what's happening. It's the connection of seeing it and then doing it in the moment immediately, and no hesitation to it. I think that'll come with understanding the offense better as he continues to learn it. But there's some things for sure that I think he can improve on that will help him a lot. And I like his plan that he's got put together here for the offseason and what he's going to go do and where he's going to go work. That part is good. And I think he'll see some benefit from it. So, and a lot of that's, it all ultimately falls on me too. I look at it as someone who I got a really good expertise for the quarterback position. I feel really good about my ability to coach it and coach offensive football. And, I'm disappointed in myself some too, that I couldn't find a way to get more or better out of the position as a whole, Will and Mason included, and that's one of the things that I got to look at and find out where I can be better for what's next. And, there's some professional pride involved in that I have to take a good look at and see where my shortcomings were in that process too, because I obviously have a hand in it.
On the quarterback side of things, like some of the abilities that you talk about, isn't some of it also just innate?
There is some things that are innate in quarterback play. There is parts of it that guys just do naturally, and there is some things where you can help improve that part of it too, though. So it's twofold. I mean, you got to meet halfway sometimes in that process, but there's certain things that some guys just do, and that's part of what separates quarterbacks in this league. Is there's some guys that just do at a different level than really anybody on the planet, and that's what you're always trying to find. But there's also a lot of guys that may not be that can still find a way to play effective football, and that's ultimately my job is to help get to that point where you can still play effectively, even if you aren't one of the top 5 quarterbacks on the planet and can only do things those 5 guys can do.
And do you intend to go back and look at the things that you did this season, self-critique, and really revise the way you do things going forward?
Yeah, a lot. That's the one thing I've always believed is a strength of mine, is I do have the ability to be humble and take constructive criticisms and try to improve. I don't take it personally because I think ultimately I'm just trying to be the best version of me that I can be and help this team as best I can to win football games. I take a lot of notes. I look at a lot of things from my perspective on that I could do better, and there'll be a long list of things that can be improved. Some minor, and then some there's more meat to. There's more things that I got to do a better job of. So I'm very, very, very open to those things, and I've done a pretty deep dive over the course of the season as it is, and then I'll really step back and look again once I get away for a little bit of time and clear your mind and get away from the emotion of the season and the up and down of the season and really dial in on what I can do better and really help our team.
About JC, but is there a lot of excitement internally about what you got from him, Tavondre, Jarvis in particular, and any of those other guys that maybe didn't have a first string offensive and defensive role a lot that you saw something of late in the season?
No doubt. That's what's encouraging to me is that we got, a lot of first and second year players, I think, that are really poised to continue to help us and continue to grow. I think the season that Tavondre had, I think, these rookies, talking to them today, even they just, how long the season is for them and what it feels like and how much different they feel going into their second year. And there's expectation on all of them. The expectation is to continue to improve. Sweat's had a nice year. Jarvis did a lot of really good things. He's going to be counted on. Sweat's going to be counted on. JC is obviously going to be counted on. These are what the cornerstone, your youth of your team is where you build good teams, and you supplement it with the right veterans. And I think we've done a good job of that as well. But we're counting on all these young players to come back better than they were. But there's a lot of guys I'm excited about that put some good tape out there. And even a guy like James Williams, the way he played on special teams over the second half of the year was incredibly impressive. And like I said before about the special teams depth, those guys provide that depth as well. It's an important part of our building our team. And those guys have all played a lot. And I think that we're going to be better for it because of it.
You're probably involved a lot last year, but do you anticipate being even more involved maybe in the scouting process this year, especially with the quarterback position being one in need? More pro days, more off-season stuff, and you're looking forward to that.
I'm back to my roots, man. I'm back to my Cincinnati days where I plan on being involved in all of it. I'll be at the All-Star games. We'll be full force at the combine. We'll be at the pro days. I'll be at all these guys' pro days. We'll bring them all in. All these prospects. We'll turn over every stone to make sure we find the right one. And it's all the players in the rounds. But I love the scouting process. I love being involved in it. I love going to the All-Star games. I'm excited to go down there and watch some of these guys. And it's just sort of the process I've been used to. And last year was so difficult because of the hiring of the staff and getting systems in place. But I'll be much more present in that part of it this year than last year. Absolutely.
I'm sure you felt.
I'll come back. Go ahead.
Ryan, I'm sure you felt prepared for this job when you stepped into it, but you have a different view of that now, having gone through this season, what you've learned, what you've had to learn, things you didn't know when you got here.
Yeah, there's no substitute for doing it. The best way I can explain it is, a lot of you are parents in here. It's like having a kid where you can read all the how-to books and talk to all the people and get all the advice. Everyone tells you what you think that you're going to do and know. And then there's no substitute to just now all of a sudden you're changing diapers at 3 a.m. and no one really told you how miserable that can be. That's the best way I can describe it, is that there's all the preparation done is all great. And I felt prepared for it. There's just so many things that come up and so much more that you just don't know about until you're in it, until you're doing it every day. And that's a really important part. And I think that's why you see the guys that the longer they do it, the better they've gotten at it, the more refined their process is, and the better they handle all elements of the team. And that's what I'm looking for is I got to keep that development track too. I'm just like our rookie players. I got to there's expectations on me, and I have to keep getting better and keep improving. And that's my goal for myself too, is to take all the lessons I learned this year and keep getting better. But yeah, there's no substitute for the experience. There's no way to know what it is until you do it.
Peter and JC talked about being motivated out of the embarrassment of what happened this year. Sounded a little bit like you felt that way yourself. What do you think about players using that? How much will you use that?
Yeah, we're all prideful. We're all competitors. I'm incredibly prideful. I've won a lot of football games on teams in this league, and I've lost plenty too. But this is a season that I know I'm a good football coach. I know I'm going to be a good head coach. But this is certainly not the results I had anticipated, and I'm going to have to do a much better job. And it is embarrassing. I do not like standing up here talking about picking first in the draft. I don't like it. I don't like the fact that we won 3 games. That's not the standard I've set for myself. So yeah, I get where they're coming from. That does motivate me. I don't. No professional that likes to compete likes to be embarrassed. And there's feelings of that when you only win 3 games, and I'm determined to not let that happen again. Thank you.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan at the podium for his season wrap-up. Stillman and Company, Jared Stillman here, 102.5 The Game. Thanks to DVD as we transition over. Stillman and Company starts next, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.